HPXLOTM. Please Call Me Mr. Error by author Hoyne_Kyoma Chapter 31-60. Elaine on Loki's back pointed at Ludwig, spotting him among the group of thugs that had filled the warehouse, allowing Loki to also enjoy the show Ludwig seemed to be putting on. I have called you today to help you deal with the problem of the Brummagem boys, Ludwig said with his hands wide open, drawing everyone into the conversation. What do you think of this? Ludwig said, spreading his hands further as if he was presenting something important. You help me and I'll help you, Ludwig asked the three other late teenagers sitting on chairs around him. How do you propose to help us anyway? Your group is too small to be honored, the first teenager said, speaking to Ludwig in an arrogant tone. The basic requirement for us to recognize you is dough. Do you have enough in the first place? The second teenager asked Ludwig. We do. Wouldn't 30,000 pounds count? Ludwig suggested. Doesn't mean much when you don't have a stable business of your own, the third teenager asked Ludwig. We're well on our way to setting up a business. We have a steady income of about 10,000 a month and we're moving to expand in the home invasion sector from the next month. Are you sure? Henry has a good hold on the home invasion sector. We've received word from reliable sources that Henry has been retired. Is that why he hasn't appeared in the black market the last couple of months? The heck are they doing? Loki thought as he looked at the four people debating with each other while sitting on chairs in an encirclement of about 30 other teenagers. I thought Ludwig was a low-level thug. When did they become part of a gang? Or are they trying to form a new gang or something? It seems like he's having a meeting with the different gang leaders in the area. Something to humiliate him in front of them would be good. How do I take revenge though? Loki wondered as he looked around the warehouse. There was a small room at the end of the warehouse that kept attracting his attention, so Loki activated his spirit vision, but there was nothing Beyonder related inside it. His eyes sparkled however as he spotted Princess Rapunzel climbing the wall and moving towards the room. Nothing to do here, but I'll scout around just in case. Hope Princess Rapunzel will be back soon with good news. They're keeping themselves distracted. Less trouble for me. I can take my time to decide how I want to punish them. Loki idly stared around the warehouse looking for something to gain inspiration, when he suddenly heard a squeak beside him and spotted Princess Rapunzel near him. Oh, what happened, Princess Rapunzel? Loki asked with a smile. Squeak squeak. The Niffler squeaked and began to turn its body around, indicating something using its actions. Do you want me to follow you? Loki asked the Niffler and it nodded. Fine. Loki jumped down from the air conditioner he was standing on and arranged the cards of blasphemy he'd been carrying around so that they wouldn't fall off. He then began to follow the tiny Niffler that was running around the walls of the warehouse. Moving around the warehouse, Loki spotted another broken window, and after waiting for a bit, he saw Princess Rapunzel climbing into it. Loki dragged a nearby wooden crate to climb to the window's height and looked around the room that was visible behind it. Was this the room that was inside the warehouse? You want me to come in? Loki asked Princess Rapunzel, who was already on the other side of the window, having entered the room through a vent. Squeak. Fine, I'll come, give me a second. Spreading his spirituality on the lock on the window, Loki focused his mind on opening it. Click. A faint click resounded through the room but did not escape it, allowing Loki to swing open the window and enter. Now what? Loki asked the Niffler. Squeak squeak. The Niffler climbed the wall like a spider and slipped behind a painting on the far wall of the room. What? Is there a secret stash behind it? Loki immediately moved forward and pushed the painting to the side, only to be met with a Niffler sitting on a locked safe. You did good, Princess Rapunzel, Loki said, petting the Niffler with happiness. You did good, Princess Rapunzel. Elaine praised too, mimicking Loki by scratching it behind its ear. Loki moved his hand close to the lock on the safe and did the same thing he had done with the lock on the window, pushed his spirituality into it and focused on unlocking it. The safe opened soundlessly and Loki found himself staring at rolls of cash and an old book that Loki declared to be a ledger after going through it for a little bit. Now that I have this, I have an idea for the best surprise I can give him. But then Loki looked at the Niffler and found that it had become disappointed that there were no shiny items in the safe. So Loki remedied the situation by bargaining with the Niffler. "I'll give you a galleon when we return, alright?" Squeak squeak. "In the meanwhile, can you store these things in your pouch?" Loki asked with a soft smile. Squeak squeak. The Niffler began to store everything inside its pouch while Loki pulled out a clean paper from the ledger book and using a pen in the office, he began to write something on it. "Wait, what will my alias be in the world? I can't take fool like Klein, so what will mine be? Should it just be error?" Loki thought for a bit and then when he figured out what to write he grew a smirk. "Huh. Now I can't wait to see his face once he realizes what happened with his money. £30,000, all for me. Big BW other, don't smile like that, you look scary." Elaine said, but she had a creepy smile on her little face too, as if she understood exactly what Loki was doing. "Ha ha. Elaine, how can I not laugh? I am so very happy today," Loki said, picking up Elaine and rubbing his face against her cheeks in a giddy mood. "I can finally avenge you, at least a little, Loki." With the Niffler having stored everything and Loki having written a note, he smiled happily before closing the safe and placing the painting back to cover it. Loki slipped back out through the window, but before he left, he stared at the small stack of newspapers in the corner and focused his spirituality on it. A small flame sparked in the room and before anyone could do anything the entire stack of paper had begun blazing with flames. "Sigh, I can still only use about 3 spells before tiring myself out. I hope a wand is really as impressive as Grandma made it out to be." But still with a happy smile on his face because of what he had achieved, Loki along with Elaine and Princess Rapunzel, slipped into the darkness of the night, leaving behind a blaze that was bound to kick up a storm. "What do you mean you didn't find anything?" Ludwig shouted at the 2 boys who had just arrived in the room bearing bad news. The boys kept their heads down and remained silent even as Ludwig shook his hand in front of them while clenching a piece of paper, one that he recognized since it was from his own ledger. "This. How can all of you be so incompetent and only find a single piece of paper? Are you bloody kidding me right now? What were you wankers even doing there? There were 30 bloody thousand quid in that safe and all you found was this. Are you bloody serious?" Taking a deep breath in to control his anger, Ludwig swiped his hands over his face and tried to calm down, but before he could, he acted on impulse and picked up the iron rebar that was near him and tossed it at the 2 scared boys. "Sod off now. I don't want to see your bloody faces ever again." The 2 hurriedly ducked and allowed the rebar to land on the wall and fall down to the carpeted floor with a dull thud as Ludwig glared at them until they finally left the room without a sound. "God damn it," Ludwig shouted, tossing a delicate glass cup at the wall, shattering it in the process. After a few minutes, when Ludwig had finally calmed down, he looked around the room until his eyes spotted the telephone on the desk. Ludwig nervously chewed his nails and began to debate something in his mind. "Sigh, I have to take responsibility." He then moved to the telephone and dialed a number using the rotary. Ring *ring *ring*. Click. Ludwig heard the call connect and then fell into a strange silence as he felt fear creeping up while he remembered the message he had to convey. The heavy breathing on the other end only made him feel worse, like a knife with a sharpened edge was held to his throat waiting to slice it. "Are you curious about the Lord I believe in?" Having had enough of the silence, the voice on the other side of the phone finally asked. "The Lord that created everything," Ludwig responded like he was reading something from a script and continued. "The Lord who reigns behind the curtain of shadows. The degenerate nature of all living things." As Ludwig finished, he felt his instincts honed on the street blare at him like he'd just come under the gaze of a predator. Another bout of silence took over the office as the voice on the other side only breathed heavily, seeming to wait for Ludwig to speak up. But given how Ludwig was shivering with fear and clattering his teeth as if he was standing in Antarctica, the voice on the other side finally asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "Is it bad news?" "Why yes. I see. What is it?" "The money we collected was street stolen." "I see. There was a breathless silence this time, and Ludwig felt like he could feel the fury of whatever had been watching him all this time. Did the culprit leave anything behind? The voice on the other side asked, and Ludwig gulped audibly. He left behind a paper that said praise the. Ludwig struggled while trying to get the words out, but seeing he couldn't, he took a deep breath to calm himself and then spat out all the words in a rap. Praise the error god. You got jebaited, you bloodsuckers. Another bout of silence captured the phone call, but this time Ludwig felt like if he made a single move he'd lose his head. Beads of sweat started to form on his brows, but he didn't move to wipe or get rid of them. The voice started to breathe heavily on the other side of the call, and Ludwig stayed put. He felt like his life depended on playing statue. Bring it to the black market at the edges of Nocturne Alley tomorrow. The voice said, and before Ludwig could respond, he heard a click signifying the end of the call, taking away the gaze that had kept him frozen in place. Sigh, that was scary. A little while earlier, Loki and Elaine laughed while rolling on the floor in the living room. Did you see that, sis? How we took away all their money. Squeak asterisk squeak. Yes, Princess Rapunzel, you took all the money. No one is taking credit for your hard work. Loki praised the indignant Niffler. Squeak squeak squeak. Haha, alright, we'll decide a new name for you, Loki said and looked at Elaine. Is it alright to give him a new name, Lil, sis? Loki asked. But doesn't Princess Rapunzel like her name? Elaine said, hugging the Niffler and petting its head cutely. See, Princess Rapunzel feels sad about it, Loki said, pointing at what was unmistakably a frown on the Niffler's face. Why not give him a name that better suits him? Then in that case, Elaine placed her hands on her head and began to think with all her little brain power. Since he is very happy all the time, Sunny? Elaine asked with a cute smile on her face. Loki raised his eyebrows as he thought, that's surprisingly insightful. Sunny, huh? But given his darkness pathway powers, wouldn't it be fitting to call him Sunless? Wasn't there a character already called Sunless somewhere? Well, this one's called Sunless too now, I guess. What about Sunless, little sis? And then we can call him Sunny. Like a nickname? Elaine asked with a cute pout on her face, since she was still thinking hard. Yes, like a nickname. Loki nodded. All right. Elaine nodded, and then they looked toward the Niffler in question. Would it be all right to call you Sunless and Sunny, little guy? Loki asked politely. Squeak squeak. Clap 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 clap. Everyone clapped at the new naming ceremony, and after a while, when Elaine fell asleep, Loki transported her to her bed so that she could rest well. Sunny then dropped all the rolls of cash and vanished into the spirit world to sleep and take a rest. Looking at the rolls of cash on the table, Loki wondered what to do with them. How about placing them above the gray fog? So that when I eventually have followers and they ask for money, I can give them all money from this. I guess I can even leave the darkness and the error pathway blasphemy cards up there, since I don't need it much and it'd be risky to carry them around all the time. I was probably lucky they didn't drop out of my pockets while I was running and jumping around the warehouse. But they do give me anti-divination and anti-prophecy abilities. Fine, I'll leave it above the gray fog for now and then take it with me when I'm doing something Beander related. Loki quickly set up an altar to sacrifice the items for himself to receive above the gray fog. But he paused for a bit. What is my honorific name going to be? I can't just use the fool's honorific name since it'll point in the wrong direction, but something similar should be alright, I guess. I can use the alias I wrote down on paper I left behind. Lighting up the candles with his spirituality, Loki paused to remember the honorific name that Klein chose. After a while, Loki began to pray in front of the altar while reciting the honorific name he'd chosen in Latin. The first line, I can replace the fool with the error, since that's the sequence 0 of my pathway. The error that does not belong to this era. The second line can remain the same since I'm also technically the ruler above the gray fog. The mysterious ruler above the gray fog. The last line can be the same since I also am technically a blessed of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth, but I feel like it should be something personal. But what can it be? The one who walks the veiled path lost to history. The line refers to the error pathway that no one knows about, possibly hidden by the true god of the darkness pathway. As soon as Loki finished the chant, he heard scant murmurings. So he stood up in place, took 4 steps counterclockwise, and chanted the honorific name of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth to activate the luck enhancement ritual. The tattoo on the back of Loki's hands expanded and spun rapidly before he heard the maddening murmurings as his spirit body was pulled above the gray fog. Arriving above the gray fog, Loki soon found a crimson star in the distance pulsating with light concerning the prayer that Loki had just performed. Loki extended his spirituality to touch the star, and the moment he did, he could see himself praying while performing a ritual. Pouring in a little bit more spirituality, a golden door that crossed time and space formed so that he could exit the Saphira castle right above the altar where the ritual was taking place. Loki stepped out with a little apprehension, but once he used the door, he found himself able to respond to the ritual using his spirit body. Seeing himself standing with his hands in a prayer posture, Loki felt a little weird, but he quickly picked up the rolls of cash and the 2 blasphemy cards. But he had to pick up the cards of blasphemy first, since only then did his astral body become full enough to pick up the rolls of cash. Returning and closing the door, Loki finished the response of the ritual. He tossed all the money and ledger to the side and found himself storing the cards of blasphemy on a small table he created out of the fog. Since I'm here, why don't I check out if there are any steps for me to climb higher in the gray fog since I've become a Beander? Loki looked around for a bit and finally spotted a set of white marble stairs that seemed to blend in neatly with the fog. Loki moved towards the stairs, and once he stepped onto the first step, the fog in front of him cleared up. A gigantic door made of orbs of light appeared in front of him. The orbs of light contained transparent or translucent worms inside them, and everything seemed to be pulsating with energy. Although Loki knew what was behind those doors, he could not see it yet. There should be other transmigrators sleeping inside cocoons inside the door. If I become a demigod, I will be able to see if any seniors transmigrated before me. Soon, Loki reached the last step on the set of stairs that had appeared and found that he could no longer continue since there were no more stairs in front of him. There was nothing but a giant chasm of fog that stood between him and the grand door that possibly held answers to his transmigration. Can I not create the stairs? Loki wondered and attempted to churn the gray fog and create a set of stairs that would take him to the door of light. But the gray fog remained still, as if learning of his intentions beforehand, and didn't budge an inch. Sigh, I guess I will have to increase my sequence to learn more. Loki moved back to the place where he had stored the cards of blasphemy and looked at them with starry eyes. I can use the cards and temporarily elevate my sequence forcefully, right? I wonder what it feels like. Stuffing the error pathway card of blasphemy into his spirit body, Loki immediately noticed the changes. A black robe covered Loki, under which was a dark black 3-piece suit. A golden cane appeared in his hands along with black gloves. Last but not least was a golden monocle that appeared over his right eye. Loki felt a rush of power pour into his body, causing a slight shift in his connection with the gray fog around him as it swirled and welled up a small storm in the Saphira castle. I feel like I'm on top of the world. Is this what it feels like to be a high-no mid-sequence Beander? Loki looked around and then finally at himself, and then realized he could see orbs of light floating around him. What are these orbs? Since Loki had forcefully elevated his sequence, he hadn't gotten any of the knowledge he would have otherwise received about the abilities. I should figure out a way to test this out on other Beanders if possible. This is going to be of great help. Well, if I can find some Beanders in the first place. He tried to stir the fog to help him create steps once again, but it remained still, much to his disappointment. Loki finally pulled out the card of blasphemy that was inside his spirit body and let it rest on the table once again. Sigh, now I feel weak. Loki willed himself to exit the Saphira castle and returned back to his body. With a soft prayer thanking himself in Latin, he finished the ritual and doused all the candles so that he could go to sleep. But before he could sleep, he suddenly felt something unique happening, as if he was refreshed with a lot of energy, like he had drunk a cup of black coffee. This feeling, How has my potion digested so much? Loki felt shocked at how much his potion had digested. How? That's like a quarter of the potion digested already. How did it digest so fast? Loki remained worried until a connection occurred to him as a thought. Is it something to do with the theft from earlier? But I was sure they were all just normal people, not Beyonders. So how did my potion digest so fast? Were they the fronts of a Beyonder organization? Perhaps using them to fund their activities. But still a quarter of the potion was digested at once. Was the leader of the organization a mid-sequence Beyonder or something? Phew, now I'm glad I had 2 cards of blasphemy on me during the heist. That should not allow them to learn about me using any means of divination. But, still, that could have ended poorly. I should leave Elaine home the next time I go to do such things. Let's experiment to find what thefts allow me to digest the potion faster. Loki thought as he looked around the busy tube station, wondering how many wallets he'd have to steal from to digest his potion. Alright, let's begin. Loki dove headfirst into the crowd and began to search for targets. It was already deep into the night and the only sources of light were the tube lights hung up on the walls of the station. With people returning to their homes from businesses, Loki easily found targets that were exiting the tube station. It wasn't long after he began that Loki found a wealthy man carrying a suitcase while riding the wooden escalator. Moving to stand behind him, Loki cleverly used magic to slip out the purse in the man's back pocket. And before anyone could notice anything off, Loki picked out a 50-pound note from the purse and placed the purse back into his pocket. After which Loki continued stealing from other people, except he took lesser and lesser amounts of money and finally ended his stealing spree with a few 1-pound coins. With none of the people realizing anything missing from their purses, Loki didn't seem to have gotten any feedback from his potion digestion. Did they need to know that I'm stealing from them in order for me to digest the potion? Loki wondered as he walked away from the tube station. On his way back, he donated all the money he stole to random street orphans while telling them that he'd stolen the money from someone rich. But in doing so he wondered, did they have to pay money to gangs for safety too? As Loki walked delivering the money, he suddenly stopped since he felt his potion digesting a little. It's a minuscule amount, but it's there. The potion did digest, if only by a fraction of a percent. So it is true. The person I need to steal from needs to learn the fact that someone has stolen from them, and simultaneously the people who get the money need to know it was from theft. So each theft has an audience. Would that count as a rule for acting? Loki began walking again and soon he was in front of the store he'd never thought he'd return to. Although he hadn't known much about it before, he'd learned plenty about it over the last couple of months from Wahlberga and Creature. Perhaps this is the only way I can reliably digest my potion contents before starting at Hogwarts. Loki thought as he looked at the black market shack while recalling what Wahlberga had told him about this place. That place is connected to Nocturne Alley, the wizarding black market. The Black family earns a significant cut of money each year from them, but recently we've broken ties after they stopped promoting the darkness pathway to promising recruits. Why do you need to be connected to the black market? Loki asked innocently. Because it gives me appendages that I can use to do some tasks that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise, and it's not just me that's connected with them, all the 28 noble families are in some way or another. As a demigod, I can't just respond to everything that happens myself, can I? Loki had chosen to come to this part of the black market however and not the wizarding one because it would be risky to do so. I can't directly deal with other Beyonders right now. I don't have any experience, even though I'm sure if I stole from other Beyonders my potion would digest faster. Loki pulled down his mask, straightened the collar of his jacket and stood in line with the people waiting for tasks to be assigned to them by the man in the shack. As the line progressed further and further, Loki began to feel like he had seen the person in front of him somewhere in the past. But since the person had a mask and a jacket on, Loki couldn't be sure. As the line progressed, Loki noticed a piece of paper sticking out of the back pocket of the boy standing ahead of him. Upon closer inspection, Loki felt his blood chill when he figured out what the paper was. What the heck? How did this happen? What is this strange bad luck? This is the paper I wrote my message on after robbing Ludwig and his gang. Loki wanted to step out of the line and run away, but a shred of rationality saved him and he stayed in the line. I can't act suspicious. Using all the ability to control his expression from his potion, Loki donned on the most neutral expression he could in spite of his heart beating 100 miles an hour. Oh wait, I don't need to control my expression. I'm wearing a mask, but I should still do it so I don't give myself away. Holding onto the same neutral expression, Loki used his skills as a marauder to blend into the crowd and become any other person in the line as he paid full attention to the conversation that the person in front of him was going to have. Where's Mr. A? A voice Loki was very familiar with asked. It's Ludwig. But why is he so scared? Wait a second, Mr. A. Aurora order. Loki inadvertently felt a shiver run down his spine as he mentally lampooned about how unfair the situation was. God damn it. A person from the Aurora Order. How did I get involved in this of all things? Is this why my potion digested so much? Mr. A was a shepherd, wasn't he? What's the point of getting me involved in this? Do I have to stop the true creator from spawning in London? Bollocks. I should just run away from here. Someone else will surely stop that cursed mad god from spawning. Loki stayed as still as he could, looking everywhere other than straight at Ludwig as he listened to the man in the shack respond to the question. Ho! In a hurry are you? Mr. A is waiting inside, the man said, licking his lips as he pointed at the door in the shack that always remained closed. Ludwig's body tensed as he heard those words and Loki watched him clench his hand tightly. But Loki's mind was currently on the new piece of information that was revealed. Mr. A is inside the shack. I pray to whatever deity is watching me, please keep that madman away from me. I always wondered why the man always sold stuff outside the shack. I guess even he fears disturbing the madman who is inside. Ludwig with stiff steps moved towards the door in the shack that the man pointed at and slipped past it after opening it slowly, making the wood creak under the movement. Ahem, a short cough from the man in the shack brought Loki out of his lampooning, forcing him to step up in the line. Loki looked at the man for a bit as he stared right back at him. What do you need, boy? I haven't got all day. The man said with a bit of gruff in his voice. Who's Mr. A? Loki asked with a hint of pretend arrogance in his tone. You're not privy to such knowledge. The man said with a finality in his voice. Then give me a house to steal from. Loki demanded. Will that be all? The old man asked, picking something out from his drawer. Yes. Loki said with the same arrogance as before. Then here you g. Before the man could finish his sentence, a dull thud echoed from the room, and before anyone could respond to it, a shrill scream bled out of the room behind closed doors. Ah! What in the world? Most people present trembled in fear, but Loki did his best to stay calm and pretend to be arrogant, so he threw a smirk onto his face and spoke nonchalantly, trying to joke around. Huh? Was he a sacrificial lamb? The shack owner looked at Loki with raised eyebrows but said nothing and lifted his hands from the slip of paper that was now lying flat on the table. Why, thank you. I shall be back soon. Loki said as he picked up the slip and walked away with a spring in his step, trying to keep his composure to the very end. As Loki walked away, he realized that instead of one he had gotten 2 slips of paper. Huh, 2. What is the other one? Did he give me 2 targets? Unfolding the paper to look at it, Loki began reading what was on the paper. Rules. Oh. Do not try and outsmart the dealer. Do not attempt to steal more than once a month. Targets are carefully picked and handed out so that thefts do not occur too often in an area and the operation can be kept undercover. Oh wait, so was this why the man who employed me was killed? Because he tried to outsmart the dealer by employing me and stealing more than once a month. But how did he get 2 targets for us? Did they give it to him as a test or something? Or maybe he had it from his last sidekick who died. Whatever it is, they're pretty strict. Moving on to the 3rd rule, Loki read it with caution. Do not harm any other person in a similar occupation following the rules of the black market. Ah, so what that man was doing to me was illegal. Was that why he got sent to the gallows the second time he tried to outsmart the system to gain more money? Poor Gu, wait, why am I feeling pity for him? He did something wrong and got served the result of his own actions. Not my fault he died. Loki read the rules again and again so that he would always remember them and so that he wouldn't end up in a situation like his previous employer even by mistake. A few minutes before Loki walked away with his target. Where's Mr. A? Ludwig asked. There was a slight pause in the actions of the man in the shack as he looked up and seemed to keenly pay attention to Ludwig, who was covered by a black jacket and a white mask. His eyes showed a faint hint of recognition, after which he said, "Ho. In a hurry are you? Mr. A is waiting inside." The fear that emanated from Ludwig was palpable, and the man behind the counter licked his lips as if trembling in joy at the dish that Ludwig was presenting. Ludwig looked in the direction of the door that the man behind the counter pointed at and felt his blood chill at the thought of having to meet the person he so dreaded meeting. With an almost imperceptible nod, Ludwig walked towards the door and stood in front of it. He tried calming himself down, but he couldn't cool his nerves. Before he could knock on the door though, a faint whisper that only he heard carried out of it. "Come in." Pushing the door open slightly, Ludwig slipped into the pitch-black room, with no source of light even as much as touching the inside. As he closed the door, a faint candle flickered to life, throwing light on the hooded robed man who was sitting on a high stool, seemingly waiting for his prey in this dungeon. Gathering up some courage, Ludwig walked to the man, held out his hand and greeted, "I'm Ludwig. You must be Mr. A. I've been wanting to meet you." A dainty hand from underneath the robe slipped out and held Ludwig's hand, but ignored his introduction and instead carefully examined the rough hand. Ludwig felt a little weird at having his hand examined, but he remained calm and allowed Mr. A to do as he wished. After a few seconds, a faint whisper echoed in the silence of the room. "You must not lie in front of the Lord." Mr. A brought Ludwig's hand under the hood, and before Ludwig could realize what was happening, bit of a finger. "Ah." Ludwig held his hand and collapsed on the ground screaming while Mr. A calmly crunched the finger in his mouth, bones and all. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Ludwig looked up at Mr. A with fear growing in his eyes as he stared at the man and started crawling on the floor to escape the room. Mad man. He's a madman, Ludwig thought, trying his best to leave the room before Mr. A tried anything else. But to Ludwig's misfortune, Mr. A spoke just as he reached the door. "Where are you going?" The sentence was more a statement that reminded Ludwig of his position instead of a well-meaning question that inquired of his plans for the morning. He tried to run away, trying his very best to escape using the door that was just so close, but it felt like something was holding his body in place, something that wouldn't let him go in any other direction than the crazed hooded man sitting in front of him. Ludwig, holding his stubbed finger, stood up slowly, dragged his feet and appeared in front of Mr. A once again. "The paper?" Mr. A asked. Ludwig pulled out the paper from his pocket and instead of handing it to Mr. A directly, he placed it on the table in between them and moved back a few steps in fear. A ruby ring on Mr. A's hand glimmered as he picked up the paper and folded it open on his dainty palm. When he did, Ludwig heard him mumble something, but he could only make out a few words. "Who? Owner, paper. Who? 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 Owner, paper." That happened 7 times before Mr. A tilted his head slightly upwards and entered a state of cogitation. The locker where the money was kept first came into view. Rolls of cash were strewn about with a single book. A blurry hand moved into the picture as it picked up all the rolls of cash, but just when the scene changed again to show the face of the person connected to the hand, everything became shrouded in a dense gray fog. Mr. A broke out of his divination attempt and looked at Ludwig, who was standing a few steps away from the edge of the table, his finger still bleeding. Mr. A's cold red eyes shone through his hooded face, which was shrouded in darkness, giving them an eerie glow. "Do you have any other clues?" Mr. A asked Ludwig, but he shook his head quietly. "I see." A somber silence set into the room and it felt suffocating to Ludwig. Just as Ludwig thought about breaking the silence to ask for permission to leave, Mr. A spoke up. "Give me your hand." Ludwig shivered with fear as he involuntarily took a step backward. "WWHY? Ludwig questioned, but Mr. A gave no answer. Instead, his red eyes just peered at him through the darkness. Holding his left hand out, Ludwig resigned himself to fate and accepted that he would lose another finger. But to his surprise, Mr. A calmly said, "Other hand." Holding out his bleeding hand, Ludwig stood in fear as blood pooled on the table. Mr. A casually held the bleeding hand once again with his clean, dainty hands that had the ruby ring on it. He covered the bleeding finger and miraculously the finger healed enough to stop the bleeding. Ludwig, feeling the pain in his finger subside, grew shocked. Is this what a Beander can do? Though, before Mr. A returned the hand and let it go, he licked all the blood around the finger and wiped it clean. Ludwig felt disgust creep up from the very depths of his being as Mr. A's slimy tongue wrapped around his finger stub, but he made no external move to push him off, partially because he was still astonished but mostly because he was still subconsciously rooted with fear. After a minute of licking his finger clean, Mr. A finally released Ludwig's hand. "You may go," Mr. A ordered. Ludwig stepped back with a stumble, but seeing that Mr. A was no longer focused on him, he immediately stepped towards the door, flung it open to throw himself out of the room without looking back. But as soon as he reached the door, a knife flew through the air and stabbed his head, causing him to drop dead before he could leave the room. Mr. A walked up to the corpse and spoke barely above a whisper, "Too bad for you, flesh tastes the best when it is cooked with fear and seasoned in hope." Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. So does Mr. A hold Beander gatherings there? Loki wondered as he walked back to the shack after he finished wiping clean a safe in the house that was his target. Truthfully, he had not been wanting to return to his life as a thief, but thinking about how he needed to experiment with his potion's digestion, Loki quickly stole all the valuables from the house and was on his way to sell them to the man in the shack. Loki walked through the depressing and dark alleyway until he finally arrived at the shack that was less crowded than when he had arrived early in the morning. Yet Loki could feel people's burning hostility. He could feel there were several pairs of eyes staring at him, something that was keeping him on edge. What's going on? Although Loki felt the pressing gazes on him, he did his best to ignore them and act like he was an arrogant young man as he did in the morning. "Give me something better next time," Loki said arrogantly, throwing the bag of valuables onto the desk. Loki estimated he would receive about £3,000 for his steal. "Oh, you're done so soon?" the man in the shack asked. "Yes, there was very little worth stealing. Like I said, give me someplace better next time." The man became silent and began to check the gold and diamonds while Loki looked around the shack, at least he intended to, until he found a paper stuck to the wall behind the man. "Huh, what's that?" Loki asked, pointing at the poster stuck to the wall, something he hadn't seen when he was here during the day. "A competition," the man announced without looking up at Loki. "Competition? For what?" "For announcing how rich you are to everyone so that they can target you." Loki asked with discontent, since any competition related to thieving was like asking to be shot in the foot in his opinion. "Won't you get targeted by everyone once you are revealed as the winner? And who even arranges a competition for stealing? What the heck? Weird." "Well, a Yugen like you might think so, but for the rest, it could change their life if they win it," the man commented. "Huh, why so? Is some rich bastard out there going to make you a millionaire if you win?" "No, I'm not supposed to say this, but seeing how you're new here, I can give out a little bit so that you can catch up to the rest." "You're making an exception just for me?" Loki asked, surprised. "Think nothing of it. Most people here already know what I'm about to tell you," the man in the shack said, and paused before continuing with a crafty smile. "Who knows, other than becoming the big boss of the area, you could become something more than human." Is he talking about becoming a Beander? They have a thievery contest for becoming a Beander. How do those things correlate? Oh, wait, didn't he also tell you could become the leader of the gangs in this area? The boy who Mr. A met today. He was killed, Loki asked, a little shocked since he had only been joking in the morning. Ha 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 ha, you are quite sharp and right. It is indeed a fight for his position. So everyone wants to become boss. But maybe this way I can digest my potion faster. What's the competition about? Loki asked, slightly interested. What else? It's about who can get the most money in a week. Wait, but we can only strike a single house in a month. Everyone will turn to killing each other for their loot. This is going to be a bloodbath, isn't it? Loki thought, scared. Who'd take part in this madness? People will just kill each other left and right and end up with nothing but death all around. He looked up at the man in the shack and his blood froze seeing the cold smile on his lips. Ah, that's why people were staring at me when I arrived with the bag. They wanted to target me, but why didn't they attack me when I was on my way to the shack? As if listening to his thoughts, the man in the shack answered. You're lucky. Today is a calm day. The competition starts from tomorrow. So beware. The man said, finally looking at Loki and slamming a roll of cash onto the table, ready for taking. What the hell have I gotten myself into? You have precisely a week from now. May the creator work in your favor. Loki immediately stuffed the roll of cash into his pocket and began to lead through the streets, staying wary of the eyes that were all keeping track of his steps. It'll be hard to keep them away from following me. I should walk around a bit so that I can lose them and only then go home. Don't want a random person showing up, even though creature might be able to protect us easily apart from the wards that are already in place. Walking towards the tube station, Loki made his way through the crowd, slipped into the bathroom in the tube station, flipped his jacket inside out and removed his mask. This should do. Loki, then feeling no more stares following his every move, slipped out of the station and moved towards 12 Grimmauld Place. Arriving home, Loki went straight to the living room and sat down on the table to relax and think about what he had just learnt as he played with Sunny. The day turned into night, but Loki hadn't moved from his spot. Is something bothering Master? Creature asked as he stopped his cleaning and looked at Loki with worry in his eyes. Oh, is it so clear? Loki asked, surprised since he had kept his expression neutral with the help of his potion. From it he'd learned how to control his expressions so that he could lie more effectively. It wasn't anything too powerful yet, as Creature pointed out. No, it's just that the Master has been holding the paper the wrong way all this time. Creature reasoned, causing Loki to chuckle and turn the newspaper around. Sigh, I'm just wondering if I should take part in something dangerous. I have a solution for this if Master permits, Creature said, bowing slightly. A solution? That would be appreciated. Loki readily nodded. Creature nodded and immediately conjured a dice on his hand out of thin air. If the dice lands on anything other than a 6, it means Master should not participate, and if it lands on a 6, it means he should. I understand. Loki nodded and looked at the table, waiting for Creature to throw the dice. Tap 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 tap. The dice rolled around on the table and Loki looked on with earnest eyes as the dice began to spin round and round on its corner before slowing down and landing on a number. It seems like it's a 5, Master, Creature said with a smile on his face. But I wanted to participate. Loki said with disappointment. Isn't that your answer then, Master? Creature said, wisdom reflecting in his eyes. Wah oh. H. I see what you did there. Hee hee. That was a nice one, Creature. As long as Master is happy. Thank you, Creature. You're the best. Loki, pacing around his room, began to formulate a plan that he would follow while participating in the competition to maximize benefits. This is a golden opportunity for me to digest my potion to a large extent if I do the right things. Since otherwise, to finish digesting my potion I will need to steal from a large number of people, and that will put me on the cops' radar and make things risky for me if I get caught. I already have an arson charge and a hit and run charge, so I don't want to increase my wanted level just yet. And stealing from them, as much as I don't like it, will also leave me at odds with my conscience. So the only option left is this, stealing from criminal scum. And I can do it without worry since they won't go to the police. But I need to make sure for the rest of the week that no one follows me home, or they'd be suspicious about me living in 12 Grimmauld Place. A place where they send people who break the rules to die. To know who has the most money, however, I need to keep an eye on all of them. Maybe a high place. Leaving the house at once, Loki moved to the black market and began to search for locations in high positions that would help him spy on other people. I need a place that can look down on other people, but also a place that will not be sought out by other people so that I can spy in peace. What if I chose a location that is visible to everyone? Won't the others not choose such a place since it won't give them any cover? That should also keep them from attempting anything on me since everyone will know I don't have anything on me. And even if anyone is foolish enough to attack me in spite of all that, they'll become the targets of everyone else since it'll be an open place everyone can see. Loki thought about the pros and cons of finding such a place for himself and decided he would go with it. But is there such a location here? Loki set out on foot to look at all the areas that might help him out, but, goddamn, I'm small. I'm sure I can directly walk under traffic barricades given how short I am. Every building looks tall to me. Pausing a little to consider his problem, Loki began to search for a place he could easily climb to gain a vantage point to look at the black market. That place should help me scout. Loki thought, looking at a small 2-story house that was empty. Slipping along to the window of the house, Loki began to climb up with the help of his enhanced agility and sense of balance he obtained. After drinking the potion, standing on the roof, Loki looked around the entire area for a better vantage point, but there seemed to be no other houses that towered the one he was currently standing on. Is this really it? Loki wondered as he stood on top of the roof. Sigh, at least it gives me a good look around the black market. Loki looked around the black market and spotted many thieves picking spots around corners or bends where they could ambush their prey. They all looked at Loki when he looked at them and just ignored him since he was too small to be any real threat to them. Wait, so each time I steal from a thief, will I have to get down from the roof and climb it again? Damn, I didn't think about that. Getting down from the roof, Loki wondered, now to hide my identity, I could use the same mask I've been wearing all this time, but I feel like I should wear something different. Loki left the black market area and began to search for masks in various stores. Nah, not a lion or a dog. I want something scarier. Too bad it's not Halloween. Oh, that one should do, Loki thought as he looked at a plague doctor's mask that he remembered Eamon used to wear in the original series. Good. Now I have a mask that will keep my identity hidden. All I have to do is to begin stealing from everyone. As Loki began to leave the store with the mask, he spotted something in the distance. Why didn't I think of getting this? Binoculars. They are bound to be helpful. Loki purchased the binoculars and the plague doctor mask and left the store to go back home. Alright, this should be enough to help me keep an eye out on everyone from tomorrow. Anything else I should be worried about though? With nothing else striking his mind for now, Loki collapsed on the bed beside Elaine and fell asleep to get as much rest as he could for the next week, which he felt was going to be troublesome. Waking up the next morning, Loki took a deep breath and readied for the upcoming fight. I hope everything goes as planned. Walking out onto the streets, Loki found himself wearing a plague doctor mask with binoculars hanging around his neck, wearing a dark black coat and pants that made him look like a mini witch doctor to the passers-by. Everyone seems to be on edge, Loki noticed as he walked in the dark streets of the black market. I can just kill them off when they try to interfere with my kill. No, why would I just kill anyone? I guess the tense atmosphere is getting to me. Everyone seemed to be keeping an eye out on the competition to see if there could be anyone who had money on them, something they could steal. Arriving at his pre-planned location, Loki climbed to the roof of the 2-story house once again, but what he saw from there left him a little shocked. Bollocks. Why does it feel like an entire village is here to steal? Every other corner around the street that led to the shack in the black market had a group of thieves waiting for unsuspecting strangers to arrive to steal from them. How are there so many people here today? Will I even get a chance to steal if there are so many people here today? Taking cover in the shadows on the roof, Loki pulled up his binoculars and began to scout out for people who were coming around the streets so that he could steal from them. And then he sighed. I'm certain my target would have already lost anything of value on him before I even dropped down from the roof. Just when Loki found himself in a bind, he spotted a man freely walking down one of the streets. Why is he walking so carelessly? Does he not know about the competition? And as expected, when the man reached a dark corner, a group of thieves ambushed the man, but before any of them could fully even step into the street, bang asterisk bang, the man pulled out a gun and shot 3 times. The 3 thieves collapsed instantly, dead. The rest of the thieves in the street immediately hid deeper into the shadows to stay out of the man's path. Wah! Guns. Why didn't I think people would be using guns? How many of those that are waiting for an ambush have a gun? Ha ha ha, those 3 people just died. Obviously, they got what they deserved. Criminal scum, probably had other filthy ideas in their head. Maybe they'd have shanked the man if he wouldn't have shot them, and why did they not think the man would have a gun on him in the first place? Foolish bast. Huh, what's happening? Why am I thinking like this? Is it a way to cope with the fact that I just saw 3 people's heads blown off? Loki's eyes fixed on the pool of blood that accumulated under the bodies of the 3 thieves, his vision swam as he looked at them and his sense of morality twisted. Should I drink that blow? I should kill more people. Loki clutched onto his head and collapsed on the roof, trying to force out thoughts that he felt were being thrown into his mind as his own. He could feel his face smiling, yet mentally he was scared. What's happening? I need to leave. Bang asterisk bang asterisk bang. A new thief immediately shot down the man walking carelessly down the street, bringing Loki out of his worried thoughts. The thief stayed alert and pointed his gun at all the other thieves hidden in the street and slowly bent over the body of the dead man to pick up both the loot and the gun that the man was holding onto, even in his death. After looting the body, he began moving toward the shack at the center of the black market. One part of Loki immediately wanted to leave, while another part wanted him to stay and enjoy the maddening blood work that was being spread around the street. What's going on? Why am I feeling like this? Eventually, he spent the rest of the day studying the various thieves who fought each other, all trying to be the ones who stole the most. But if given the opportunity to describe what he'd seen today, Loki had only a single word in his vocabulary: madness. The streets that were usually wet with puddles that formed as a result of London's never-ending rain, were today filled with quagmires formed from blood instead. Loki had puked twice throughout the day watching the madness that had ensued, but it still hadn't quelled the queasiness he felt in his stomach. In spite of watching everything that happened carefully, Loki realized all he understood today was that the value of human lives to these people amounted to nothing. The thieves were cold, calculative and highly efficient. Do I have to become like that? Do I have to give up my humanity to become a thief? God damn, this is stupid. Why did I pick such a stupid pathway? I should have just taken the darkness pathway and be done with it. Bloody hell. Loki got down from the roof and stepped into the streets, walking through the puddles of blood since there was no way to walk around them, his eyes constantly moving along his blood-red reflections in each puddle as he navigated through them. As he was leaving, Loki sent one last glance the shack's way. How could they have done something like this? And why did they do something like this in the first place? Doesn't doing this reduce the amount of money they will get in the future? And that stupid nagging feeling at the back of my mind that wants me to drown myself in these pools of blood. Are they using a Beyonder item to make me think like this? The smell of iron that Loki had come to recognize as the smell of blood suffocated him as he breathed in the turbid air. But just as Loki was about to leave, he spotted a man hooded in a dark black robe who stepped out of the shack and onto the street. The man seemed to be shivering, but Loki felt something was off about it. The man's shoulders were squared and he didn't seem afraid of all the blood and signs of violence on the streets. His posture is too relaxed for him to be scared. He is not afraid. Is he enjoying it? Loki thought, confused as he stepped behind a building and began to observe the situation. The man knelt on the ground, brought his face close to the puddle of blood and began to take deep breaths as if he wanted to breathe in the entire thing. Ew, what is he doing? Loki's sight then fell on the ruby ring around the man's finger on his left hand, and his mind immediately exploded with the value of the ring. If I'm not wrong, that ring is valuable enough to belong in the Black family's artifact collection. But suddenly the gears in Loki's mind turned. Wait, he's wearing a robe and he came out from inside the shack, is he Mr. A? Loki suddenly felt fear and went stiff, and to his misfortune, as if he had a radar in his head, Mr. A raised his head to look straight at him. Red eyes glimmered from inside the robe, petrifying Loki with fear, but then, bang, another gunshot sounded in the distance, dragging Mr. A's attention away, allowing Loki to, for the first time in his life, use his ability as a thief to find the closest exit around himself to run away from the black market. Loki ran and did his best not to look behind himself and raise a death flag as he dove into the shadows, ducking into unknown streets, people's backyards and main streets that had heavy foot traffic, as he took the most roundabout way he could to lose any tails before he reached home. Arriving home, Loki immediately ran towards the door, used magic to unlock it and stepped inside without waiting for Creature to help him in. He shut the door behind himself with force enough to rattle the windows. He was afraid. "Pop, Master Loki?" Creature asked with worry as he looked up at Loki. "Give me some space, Creature. I want to relax. A cupcake would be good too." Loki spoke in short sentences, taking deep breaths to calm his raging lungs that had become overworked due to the long run. Loki collapsed with his back on the door, sliding down until he reached the wooden floor, his heart beating 100 miles an hour and tremors running through his fingers like they were suffering an earthquake. Loki clenched his hands and thought back to the situation that he had just escaped from. That had to have been Mr. A. No one else would be mad enough to sniff blood with such religious fanaticism. But then why did he orchestrate such an event? Is it a ritual to advance his sequence? I remember seeing a ruby ring on his hand, but my intuition screamed that it was much more valuable than a ruby. Could it have been an item made from the Beander characteristic of the next sequence? Is Mr. A still not a shepherd? If that's the case, then that means he's still a sequence 6, Rose Bishop. Perhaps the ritual for becoming a shepherd requires a lot of blood to be spilt. Damn, I can't confirm my reasoning through divination since I'm not a seer or a mystery prior or even a monster. Would using the Saphira Castle help me? Loki wondered, but before he could perform the ritual to enter the Saphira Castle, Creature arrived. "Here's the cupcake Master requested," Creature said with a polite bow while a plate with a cupcake on it floated beside him. "Thanks, Creature." Loki nodded and Creature left with a polite bow after Loki picked up the cupcake from the plate. Peeling the cover of the cupcake, Loki began to munch on the sweet dessert, bringing him a bit of solace as well as energy that he seriously lacked. "I will confirm the reason for the fight in the Saphira Castle. And I need to ask Creature what he did with the gun that the guy Walburga killed had. Although I don't want to go back to that place, having a gun on me is a necessity because I eventually have to steal from them if I want to digest my potion. And I don't think I can ever step into that place without a weapon protecting me after what happened today. Damn thieves. I don't want to be like them. They're just pawns in someone else's games. Bloody hell." Left alone, Loki immediately stepped into the basement and picked out a topaz crystal necklace. He took 4 steps counterclockwise while chanting the honorific name of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth and entered above the gray fog. Once Loki was above the gray fog, he made himself a chair and a table and then sat down in it with his back resting on the backrest as he half closed his eyes and used cogitation to enter a half-sleep state. What should my divination statement be? Loki wondered as he built up the statement that he would use to divine into the situation. Is the thievery competition only a fight for the position of Ludwig? No, that's not what I am wondering about. The thievery competition is a ritual for advancing to sequence 5, Shepherd of the Hanged Man pathway. Yes, this is it. Loki quickly held up his topaz pendulum in his non-dominant, left, hand and allowed it to still. Once the necklace was still, Loki closed his eyes and chanted his question 7 times. The thievery competition, pathway. The thievery competition, pathway. The thievery competition, pathway. Comma. The thievery competition, pathway. Once he was done, Loki relied on his connection with the Saphira Castle to help power his divination with the crystal pendulum. Opening his eyes, Loki looked at the crystal pendulum that was hanging from his hand. The pendulum was not spinning, not at all. Sigh, So I can't rely on divination like Klein did. Loki thought with slight worry. Is there any other way to confirm my suspicions? Loki thought for a while with closed eyes. It couldn't be a ritual for a deity's descent since that needs a prolonged sense of suppression and gathering of negative emotions. It could just be a stupid decision from Mr. A since he's a crazy person, but would he really cause such a big incident just because he wants to see chaos? While possible, it feels rather unlikely. Let us assume it is for a ritual to advance to the next sequence then since that fits the best. Given how much planning Mr. A has put into the ritual, what would he do if he loses a key component? Loki thought with a tired cunning smile that only barely hid his thoughts. What if he loses the Beander characteristic that is required to make the potion of the shepherd pathway? Will that be possible? Loki wondered as he looked around the Saphira castle. I don't think it is impossible. Loki thought with firm eyes and then laughed at himself deprecatingly. He at least deserves such a punishment for violating my life like this. I want him to pay for making me vomit on that God-forbidden roof and staying there for the entire day while having to look at so much madness. With added interest. After a failed attempt at making himself laugh that only increased how tired he felt after having to look at people killing each other for the entire day, Loki escaped the gray fog and called for Creature. Creature. Pop. Yes, Master, Creature said with a polite bow. Do you know what happened to the gun that the man Granny killed had? Creature looked at Loki with wide eyes but did not go against his training of always obeying his master and said, I have it. But, Master, are you sure? Seeing Creature worried about him, Loki nodded lightly and spoke kindly, could you pass it to me, Creature? And thank you for worrying about me, but I know what I'm doing, at least I think so. I see. If Master is sure, Creature has nothing to add. Creature nodded and with the snap of his fingers, the gun teleported in front of him which he dropped in front of Loki on a table. Thanks, Creature. I have another request, can you make me a holster for this thing? Loki requested while Creature nodded with a short bow and left the basement. Holding the gun in his hand with unfamiliarity, Loki looked at it with an unhappy frown. Will I be able to hurt a sequence 6 with a normal gun? Well, it's not wrong to take it for self-defense anyway. Fiddling with it for a while, Loki managed to open the magazine. 5 bullets. Why can't I be like Klein and get my own demon hunting bullets? Are there even demon hunting bullets in this world? When will I have my own tarot organization? Wouldn't that make things much easier? Will I get a beautiful member like Miss Audrey? Dreams are good, Loki, but right now you have to fight against the evil overlords that are performing a ritual to kill a lot of people. Talking in the third person is fun, isn't it, Loki? Definitely not a sign of madness. Definitely. Rolling over to the next day, Loki reached the depressing and frankly stinky streets of the black market to resume his position on the top of the 2-story house. Sitting in his usual position, Loki noticed something unnerving on the streets. The bodies that were in the street yesterday, they've all been taken care of. Is he eating those body parts? Loki felt bile moving into his mouth because of the thought, but he quickly suppressed it. Instead, he finally began to observe the situation of the thieves around him. If I want to pull off a heist at the level 1 I'm thinking of, I need to make sure I pay attention to everything that will happen over the next week. And I have a few tests to conduct to see if I will be able to do as I want. Spending another day on the roof, Loki managed to keep his bile inside his stomach in spite of the horrific things that had happened in the streets. Occasionally throughout the day, Loki fired shots at the shack to see if Mr. A would be lured out, but no matter where he fired at the house, nothing happened. Is he not going to come out until the end like yesterday? What is he even doing inside there? Eating the corpses from yesterday. Whenever no one was paying attention, Loki would steal bullets from the other thieves as he continued his experiments. In the meantime, there was a new rumor among the participants of the black market competition. The Death Doctor will take care of the bodies after we leave. Loki unknowingly had already amassed a reputation without doing much among the large group of participants. The days were a blur for Loki and he was slowly learning everything about the participants and his own target, Mr. A. Whenever he went to the ground, Loki took a safe spot hidden in the shadows, something he'd spotted from the roof of the two-story house, and fired stray shots towards a few thieves who were guarding the shack since it had become an unspoken neutral ground. He wanted to see just how much it would take to send all the contenders spiraling with hate until they would break their positions and come in search of him. It isn't much. All it took was 4 shots at most to make them break position and search for the person who shot towards the shack. Loki made and refined his plan several times and tried his best to take care of everything that could go wrong. He wanted this plan to be flawless, or else he was sure he'd die a vain death. The last day soon arrived and Loki woke up in an exceptionally good mood. Even though there were dark circles around his eyes and drool sticking from his lips, he was in an exceptionally good mood today. Because today was the day he was going to perform the biggest heist he had ever planned. Knives check. No one's head will be spared from my ultimate knife skills. Charms check. No one will escape the power of the sun. Mask check, so that I look cool. Cloak check. Slots for blasphemy cards so that I gain anti-divination properties. Secret items check. Causing chaos is a duty of mine. Loki looked at the pocket watch hanging on his waist and once it hit 6 in the morning, he stepped out of the house. Today is going to be a hectic day. Hopefully nothing untoward happens. Sitting on his roof, Loki observed the shootouts and other ridiculous plans of the people around him with no empathy. He had stopped caring about other people in this line of work long ago in the week. Perhaps the way thieves treated lives as less than worthless was rubbing off on him, but Loki didn't mind. To him, as long as Walburga was revived and Creature and Elaine remained safe, everything in the world was alright, at least for now. He had learnt that caring about selfish people like these was going to doom him to an early death eventually. And so he decided not to worry. Compared to the last few days, everything is even more ferocious today. Loki said, noticing the frequency of shots being fired going up. If before it was only a few times an hour earlier, now it was a couple of times every minute. It felt like a festive season had arrived, and everyone was exploding crackers in joy. 8 teams were camping on the pathways to the shack, waiting for a potential high roller to grace their way so they could steal his money and deliver it to the shack under cover fire of their friends. On top of that, several people were camping directly around the shack to make sure that no one would attack their friends when they came to deliver goods. The shack itself had turned into a pseudo-neutral zone since no one wanted to be shot while trading their loot. It was a mess, but Loki did not worry since his plan was not dependent on it reducing. In fact, he wanted everyone to turn even more insane. His plan was dependent on the madness that had been created. Probably a Beander item, but there's another way to make them more insane. Pulling out the pocket watch that was hanging from his waist, Loki looked at the time and watched the minutes hand slowly approach 12 while the hour's hand did its best to approach 6. 6 o'clock was an important time since the competition ended at 6. Bang! Loki watched as he saw the last few stragglers move on the pathway to the shack by shooting restlessly at whatever of the gangs they could see, a few attempting to sneak their way in by finding a gap because the shack itself was neutral ground. Noticing a particular man lying hidden in the shadows of a building like a snake, Loki wondered, isn't he just like me? Waiting for the opportune moment to strike. But he wasn't given enough time to spend on the thought since the man died not long after when a different team noticed the commotion he caused by bumping into trash cans and flanked him from both sides, killing him and earning compensation in the form of loot that they quickly delivered to the shack. Will I die just like that too? No. I will win. I must win. Loki remained uninterested in the face of it all, yet a serious expression painted his face. As the clock struck 6, the campers slowly moved out of their hiding spot, creating a ruckus as they moved to the shack, a little wary of each other since they had all seen and participated in demonstrating the ugliest sides of humanity in the last week. They all stopped a few meters away from the shack since the man in the shack had left his desk and arrived in front of them. Congratulations on surviving, the man in the shack said with a hearty smile which seemed to only get on the nerves of a few, but they wisely chose to remain silent. I would love to announce the result, but if there are any of you that want to add a contribution at the last minute, you can. The man said and paused, but no one moved to add anything. Come on, old man. Announce who won already. I'm tired, I want to go eat her after I win. If you know what I mean. A man, in the crowd of those who remained, shouted, earning a few laughs, relieving the tension present. But a dangerous suspicion still remained in everyone's heart. Their eyes were sharp and their hands hovered incitingly close to their weapons. Each of them gazed at the man in the shack, but they were also looking at each other. Some of them had bloody eyes, while a few were even drooling a little. Loki didn't know if the normal people had learnt of what was happening to them, but he didn't interfere. Instead, he calmly stood up to join what was about to happen. If that is what you wish. The man in the shack replied with a sticky smile. But before the old man could announce victory, everyone heard a low thud. Looking at the source of the sound, everyone saw a knife had pierced the electrical pole beside the shack, but what surprised everyone was not the knife itself but the thin wire attached to it from the roof of a tall house, the house where the plague doctor stood. But before they could argue about what was happening, they all heard a buzzing sound. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Huh, what is that? Someone from the crowd shouted after spotting something coming down on the line. Looking towards the sound, everyone spotted a bag sliding on the wire, moving with speed towards the man in the shack. Huh, is this a last-minute entry? Someone queried, but there was no response, so the man in the shack shouted at Loki to ask him a question. Is this your entry? The man in the shack asked. But Loki ignored his question and answered with a question of his own. Why don't you want to tell them, Mr. Man in the shack? Tell them what? That they're here just to act as sacrifices for Mr. A to advance his power. Loki shouted and instantly turned the rowdy crowd silent as they stared at both the man in the shack and Loki for more answers. Is that true? A lone man in the crowd voiced the question of the masses. A total of 30,000 pounds is in that bag. Loki shouted something else, but the information caused everyone to look at him with wide eyes, especially the man in the shack, since he realized where the 30,000 pounds came from. The man in the shack was stunned, and Loki used this as an opportunity to create further chaos. He shouted, whoever wishes to take the money can take it. But you just have to kill him and his boss in the shack. There was silence for a moment, but before the people could gain their sensibilities, everyone heard a loud bang in the form of a gunshot. To everyone's expected shock, the man in the shack collapsed onto the floor with a bullet hole in his head right in between his eyes. I did it. Someone shouted, but that was enough to set fire to the keg that was filled with explosives, causing all the 8 remaining groups to pull out their guns and shoot at each other to run down the competition. Among the chaos that ensued, Loki continued with his plan and got down from the building before sprinting towards the shack. Now all I need to do is knock out a mid-sequence Beyander and the second part of my plan will be finished flawlessly. Definitely an easy task. Surely nothing will go wrong. Under the barrage of bullets that rained down on all the participants, Loki used his small frame as an advantage and moved over the shadows until he reached the shack unnoticed. As soon as he did, something bulged within Loki's coat and escaped through his sleeves. It was Sunny, the Niffler. Leaving Sunny to complete his part of the plan, Loki waited quietly in the shadows, his heart beating like a drum yet hidden under the barrage of gunfire that had been unleashed. People began to die once again, but Loki looked at the door coldly. His eyes focused, not registering the gunfire that was only growing louder. Come out, Mr. A. I have a gift for you. Loki waited for a minute, counting time in the shadows behind the bench, away from all prying eyes, until the door in the shack opened, and a robbed hooded figure stepped out into the light. The figure looked around and noticed the shootout that was going on among the participants, and then the body of the man in the shack collapsed on the floor. But before he could move or speak, Loki shouted and dragged his attention to him with a simple sentence. Do you know the true creator? A more apt name for him would be the fallen creator, isn't that right, Mr. A? His words had the unintended effect of dragging the attention of everyone fighting towards him, but Loki only rejoiced. Bang asterisk bang asterisk bang asterisk bang asterisk bang. Gunshots began to echo and bullets pierced Mr. A's head and his other vital organs. A few from the crowd seemed to have fired at him, but he didn't collapse. Damn, I knew he wouldn't be affected by bullets, but isn't this a bit too much? There are half a dozen bullets burrowed into his body. Mr. A kept standing looking at Loki through the robe with his piercing red eyes, making Loki feel queasy in his stomach. Blood leaked from his body, turning his already dark robe even darker. It was slow, but everyone around the shack spotted the bullets that were stuffed into Mr. A's body, wriggling out of his skull and other parts dropping onto the wooden deck, clattering as they tumbled. Damn, you really are immune to bullets, huh? Loki mumbled in shock, but the confidence in his eyes gave off a different assurance. He had something else planned for just this case. Before anyone could take a step or shoot another bullet, Loki found himself face to face with Mr. A. In the time it took Loki to blink, Mr. A had moved to be right in front of him. But before Mr. A could take another step forward or raise his hand to grab Loki's face, he shouted, pouring spirituality into the golden charm in his hand. Lux. The charm began to shine, like a flashlight at first but slowly like the sun. It was the flaring sun charm. Loki didn't understand why such a powerful charm from the sun domain was in the Black family house, but he grabbed it to use since this was the only thing he was sure couldn't be countered. After all, even the true creator descent vessel because of it. But even though this charm doesn't seem as strong as that, it'll probably be enough to take down a sequence 6 Beander. A pillar of sunlight that could be seen from miles away was created in but a moment. The pillar of light pierced the sky through the rain clouds that did their best to cover it, looking like the divine light of a god's retribution. From its center escaped an unholy scream, no doubt from Mr. A, who felt his flesh burning up. Aga hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Loki immediately did not harm him but made him feel warmer and better and moved closer to the tattered, steaming body of Mr. A. Loki's target was clear. He dipped close to Mr. A's hands and tugged on the finger with the ruby ring. Loki's eyes widened when, despite the hellish pain he was probably going through, Mr. A gripped his hands tight to protect the ring from being taken away. What? He can withstand the flaring sun charm. How's this possible? Suddenly Mr. A's hand twisted as it moved to grab Loki's hands and crush them to paste before he could move. But Loki's mind turned, shifting his questions to the back of his mind, and created a solution for the situation. Pulling out his loaded gun from his holster, Loki brought it right at the finger with the ring and shot at it. Bang! Asterisk. The finger was blown to smithereens and Loki finally got what he wanted. The ruby ring on Mr. A's finger. Got it. Loki had gotten the item containing the Beander characteristic of the Hanged Man pathway. Ha! I'm a genius. Ducking low at the punch that Mr. A threw at him, Loki dipped out of the range of the flaring sun charm and began to run through the streets, ignoring the chaos that had ensued behind him. No one can stop me. Taking advantage of the bright light that had blinded everyone, Loki rushed through the streets and moved into the most crowded area he had planned to enter. The tube station. The evening rush of people returning home was the perfect crowd for Loki to blend into as he pulled out his mask and binoculars and stowed them away into the pouch of his handy niffler, who had just arrived after completing its task. He would send them to the Saphira Castle once he was somewhere safe. He quickly removed his coat and changed it with another in the niffler's pouch, a deep blue diamond-patterned coat. He then pulled out a bow tie and a bowler hat along with a silver cane to look professional as he stuffed away his gloves into the niffler's pouch. Sunny then vanished into the spirit world and began to run through the deepest corners that could block attempts at divination, not that he had to do this since Loki had given it the Darkness Pathway blasphemy card, but any precaution was welcome. Once all of it was done, Loki stepped out of the tube station, moving with the crowd, crossing to whatever street the person in front of him was crossing into. Loki continued this theme for a while, only stopping when the time on his pocket watch struck 8 in the night. When Loki was satisfied that no one was following him, he finally turned towards 12 Grimald Place. As Loki walked towards home, he looked up at the dark starry sky and performed a short prayer by tapping his chest 4 times. To whoever is the Evernight goddess in this era, I thank you for keeping me safe today. Finally reaching home, Loki was greeted by a warm hug from Elaine, who had come down for dinner with Creature. Big Bewather, Elaine shouted while Loki laughed and hugged her back. What happened, Elaine? You look like you had a good day today. Loki asked, but Elaine's response only made him happier. Because you're smiling today, Big BW other. Ah, come here. Who's the best sister in the world? Elaine. Yes, Elaine is the best little sister in the world. Loki cooed and spun Elaine around the house while thanking his stars mentally for the good life he had been given in this crazy world. With the theft done, Loki spent the rest of his week inside his home in the company of blasphemy cards so that there wouldn't be anyone divining something about him through some obscure item like erodes. Loki doubted that erodes would do anything against the potential candidate of the Lord of the Mysteries, but given how the Harry Potter world was something he didn't know much about, Loki wanted to be safe and he employed any and every method he could to stay safe. Sitting inside the study room, Loki wondered out loud. That stunt brought me to 55% digestion of the potion. Now all that remains is the last 45%. But damn, I thought I'd get more feedback if I stole from Mr. A, perhaps even from the true creator, but nothing like that happened. Was it because Mr. A is not a Sequence 5 shepherd yet? He's not important enough. But then why did my potion digest by 20%? Is there something about this event that I'm missing? Loki spent some time trying to think who might have prompted the digestion of his potion the first time it did, but gave up when he couldn't figure much out. Then should I give him back the Beander characteristic so that he becomes a Sequence 5 and then steal something else from him again? No. It'll be risky to fight him anytime soon. I could only survive this time because of the Flaring Sun charm. Even though it was a weaker version of the charm, it worked quite well. Looking at the Plague Doctor mask in front of him, a smile broke out on Loki's face. I must have looked cool when I shot Mr. A's finger. Wasn't it cool, Sonny? Loki asked, looking at the Niffler, who was playing around with a shiny coin that was given to him as part of an agreement to help Loki steal from the shack. Squeak squeak, Sonny said carelessly, making a scary face and pointing at Loki. How could you say that? I'm handsome, not scary. Squeak squeak, Sonny said, showing Loki the gold galleon that was in its hands. As if I'm vain enough to pay you to praise me. Loki said with shifty eyes, but then a random galleon slipped from Loki's fingers and rolled toward the Niffler, who promptly stuffed it into his pouch. Squeak squeak. Yes, I'm glad that you get it. Of course, I looked cool. I'm the coolest person to be born after all. I wonder if Mr. A has a fear of guns now. Hee. Creepily giggling to himself, Loki walked around the room planning his next big heist. What should I do next? Steal an airplane? No, although very fun, that would probably not be related to any Beander event, so it'd give me very little digestion. But then what do I do? Let's think about it later. Let's look at my loot for now. I've been putting it away for long enough. A week should be enough time. Standing up and performing the luck enhancement ritual, Loki entered the Saphira castle and moved to the pile of things he had stolen with the help of Sunny for the low price of 3 gold galleons and 3% of the loot Loki obtained during his heist. Conjuring a table and a chair using the gray fog, Loki began to inspect the loot as he shifted through the gold and silver chains, platinum rings, and stacks of cash. None of this is very useful immediately, except maybe for the Beander gatherings I will hold in the future. At least I will not have problems like Klein being poorer than his own members in the book. Shifting through more stuff, Loki suddenly found something that caught his interest. What's this? On a tiny slip of paper were the words, 117 Nocturne Alley. Where's this place? And what's this place about? Is it an address to steal from? Or is it another target like the Black Manor that would kill any thieves sent to it? Loki put the note aside and continued to sort through the various looted materials and soon reached the last item that was the most interesting to him. It's good that I got this paper. Otherwise figuring out about the artifact myself would have been risky and a pain. Loki wondered out loud as he looked at the sheet of paper in front of him. Name: Ring of Harvest. Ability. Can graze 3 souls and use the 1 to 3 Beander abilities of the souls that have been grazed. Abilities are chosen at random. Sealing method. Needs to be fed a soul every 24 hours or risks consuming the user. So this is a discounted version of the creeping hunger, huh? Loki said, looking at the information on the paper. What souls are in it? Loki thought and began to check the ring to see what souls were trapped inside the ring. But since the ring was hungry and hadn't been fed in the last few days, a wide mouth opened on the ring and it tried to devour Loki's soul the second he picked it up. RAAAWWWWWRRRRRR. Not so fast, little guy. Loki exclaimed and used his connection to the gray fog to threaten to destroy the ring if it kept up its ferocity. The growling ring fell unusually silent with its mouth vanishing and Loki could feel a helpless aura radiate off it. If you try to devour me, I'll toss you into a box contained by a wall of spirituality and then toss you into the ocean so that no one else will ever find you. The ring whimpered and wanted to argue back, but then Loki knocked the final nail in the coffin. Imagine how hungry you will be then, imagine how many centuries you will go without food. Surely you don't want to end up so hungry that you consume yourself, do you? Loki asked with a greasy smile. Whimper, whimper. Now calm down and let me see what's inside you. And maybe, just maybe if you're good I will feed you a soul or 2. Whimper, whimper. Loki put the ring on his finger and poured his spirituality into the ring to scan the souls of the people trapped inside it. Good buoy, let's see. A soul of a Beander of the Planter pathway, a soul of a Beander of the Mystery Prior pathway, and a soul of a Beander of the Warrior pathway. First one at sequence 8, second one at sequence 9, and third one at sequence 6. Loki could feel the souls wanted to break out of the ring and escape, but it felt like something inside the ring was preventing them from even making an attempt, like barbed wires tied around their hearts, poking and prodding them each time they moved or even attempted to do so. I know that it probably sucks to be trapped. So as I graze more souls of other bad Beyonders I come across, I promise to release you all. Loki instantly felt the descent in the ring calm down. He felt like all the souls were ready to give their all to serve him. It is that bad, huh? Although Loki couldn't talk to the souls, it felt like they were nodding to his words from the agreeing aura that radiated of it in his spirit vision. Well, it's good that I got these souls, they perfectly complement my weakness for now. The Planter Pathways Sequence 8 Doctor will help me stay safe and heal minor wounds, the Mystery Prior Soul will help me divine events like Cleon. And the highest of all, Sequence 6 Dawn Paladin of the Warrior Pathway will help me strengthen my body so that I can fight more easily and also purify any evil curses aimed at me. It's perfect for me right now. But then a stray thought suddenly struck Loki's mind in relation to the Warrior Pathway, whose Sequence 0 was the Twilight Giant. Oh, didn't I meet a giant man in the police station? Was he of the Warrior Pathway? I should have realized sooner. How did I miss this? I'll ask him if I ever meet him. He seemed cheery and helpful. Who knows if I'll ever meet him again though. Strolling around the study room, Loki was reading a book he held in his hands. Hogwarts knows where you live because of a magical book and quill. And it sends you a letter with the help of a spirit owl. Damn, that puts a wrench in my plans. This means they will know I am affiliated with the Black family somehow, even though I don't carry the name, but because I live in their home. Although if people know that I am affiliated with the Black family they might not trouble me. The problem comes with the enemies of the Black family, which I have no doubt they have a lot of. I don't think I will be able to handle any enemies of that level yet since I'm still a Sequence 9 Beander. Loki looked around the room thinking for a bit as the beginnings of an idea began to form inside his head. Can I trick it? No, the real question is, can I play my part well? Stopping in place, Loki closed his eyes to figure out the plan he had. I need to hide Elaine. Didn't Granny Walburga say that she had a friend that could help? Creature. Yes, Master Loki. What is it that needs my attention? Good afternoon, creature. Could you tell me when will the person who can care for Elaine come? Mistress Walburga said you could ask me to contact her whenever you needed. Then do you know if Elaine will be happy with her? Although Mistress's friend is a little Whisper Quirky whisper, Madam Elaine shouldn't have any problems with her. Quirky. While I don't expect any friend of Granny Walburga to be sane, it worries me a little that you describe her as quirky. What is she like? It'd be best if Master Loki writes a letter and sends it to her. Her response should be sufficiently explanatory. I understand. Then please fetch a few parchments and quills with an ink pot for me caricature. Creature snapped his finger and caused a roll of parchments and sharpened quills to appear along with an inkpot on the study table, which Loki graciously accepted. What's her name and address, Creature? Cassandra Trelawney, Master Loki. Creature said after giving Loki a particular address. Thank you. Sitting on the desk, Loki began to outline a letter. Greetings, Madam Trelawney. I wish this letter finds you in the pink of health. I understand that your esteemed self is a close acquaintance of my closest ally Walburga Black. It was she who informed me that you were the one who predicted my arrival at the Black household and created a prophecy for its revival. Although I am gladly submitting to the undertaking of such a heavy burden, I do not wish to expose myself to certain unscrupulous people who have a debt to the house for now. As such, although I am ready to steer fate by its horns, I also have someone I need to take care of, someone who cannot fend for herself, my dearest little sister Elaine. It has come to my understanding that you would be honoring a deal with Mrs. Black by taking care of my dearest little sister should I have to keep her somewhere safe and hidden. Given how I am to step into Hogwarts, the platform where a lot of those that are in debt to the Black House play their tune, I need your help in hiding my sister Elaine for a few years until I gain sufficient allies and have a firm position in the Beyonder world to take care of her. I would love to meet her during the summer if possible, but such meetings can be discussed at your convenience since I do not wish to burden you further than you already are. I thank you for providing me a lever to turn my life around and am patiently waiting for your timely response to this letter. Wishing the best for you. Loki. With the letter written, Loki pulled out a whistle from his wrist and blew on it. Sunny immediately appeared, making his way through the spirit world and stopped in front of Loki. Deliver this to Cassandra Trelawney and wait for a reply. Loki said and gave the Niffler a shiny silver sickle. Squeak squeak. I know, I promised not to work you for a while and allow you to consolidate your Beyonder powers, but just deliver this one letter for me. Please. Squeak squeak. Yes, I know you're the best. What could I ever do without you? Thank you. Squeak. With one final squeak the Niffler left the house, traveling through the spirit world and arriving in front of a woman who wore a monocle made out of the bones of an insect on her face and had wild bushy light gray hair. Just as Sunny arrived in front of Cassandra and began to exit the spirit world, she raised her hand and snatched the letter from the Niffler's mouth. Squeak the Niffler shouted indignantly and looked at Cassandra with annoyance, but his entire personality flipped in a second when Cassandra tossed a ruby gem in his direction. Squeak squeak. Cassandra paid little attention to the Niffler except when she tossed it a letter she had already written and began to immerse herself in watching the heavens once again. Having received a letter in return, Sunny squeaked happily and left through the spirit world, tunning across the various dangers in it as it finally revealed itself in front of Loki once again. Oh, you're back. That was quick. Did she even read the letter I wrote? Loki noted, but he failed to see the slightly worried expression of Creature beside him. Holding the letter, which was neatly sealed in an envelope with a wax stamp that held the bearings of a noble house, Loki looked at the seal and noticed that there was a large cylindrical tower on it but nothing else otherwise. Does it represent the White Tower pathway? Loki wondered but did not voice out loud. Opening the letter with the help of a butter knife that Creature had handed over to him, Loki pulled out the parchment that had the response on it. Yes, the seal represents the White Tower pathway. Loki read out loud, each word of his turning lower and lower until it stopped. What the heck? Can she read my mind? But Loki continued to read. No, I cannot read your mind. If I couldn't predict what a sequence 9 brat that still smells of his mother's milk would think, I would be a disgrace to all the demigods of all the pathways out there. Loki breathed a sigh of relief. I will babysit your sister for you. But don't expect much of it since I run an orphanage and will leave her to her evil machinations to take over the world. What? It is what it is. We've crossed paths before when you stole money from people and donated food to my orphanage a few months earlier. We have. And if she's a demigod, then doesn't she have her enemies? How does she manage to keep those children safe? Won't there be people who can just take them hostage to make her do something? I can guarantee her safety from any harm that befalls her. That doesn't tell me much. A woman has her secrets. Arg. This is getting old. Of course, I will do this for a price. What is the price? I need you to inform me about the pathway you are following after you reach the demigod level. Of course, this can be paid after you eventually become a demigod. Huh. Oh. Does she want to mimic my abilities through imitation? The power of a sequence 6 polymath of the White Tower pathway. There are a few interesting abilities in the pathway that have caught my attention, and so I will need your help. Well, although it seems like I will have to share a few of my abilities, it doesn't harm me in any way, especially since she's already seen me using those abilities using her sequence 4 profit abilities. I know you think this is a deal that reveals your trump cards, but please understand I'm working at a very big loss. Huh. Finally. At least she got something wrong. I wonder how well I fooled her in the future, for her to think that I was thinking of this as a loss. Or maybe she could be lying about it. I will take Elaine a few days later when the time is right, so make sure you enjoy the last bit of time you have with her. Prophesizing about you, an old woman, Cassandra Trelawney. Sweet deal. Loki thought and then tossed the letter into the fireplace to burn it away, leaving no traces behind of the conversation that had just occurred. I don't want anyone to know of my relation to Elaine after Cassandra takes her. Thank you for running to and fro, Sonny, Loki said, scratching the niffler behind its ears. Squeak. Creature, thank you for telling me about her. But I want you to remember not to let anyone know that Elaine is related to me once she leaves this house. I understand, Master Loki. Loki looked at Creature for a bit, and once he was satisfied he turned back to Sonny. Let's see those Beander powers you've mastered, Loki said, picking up the niffler by the scruff of his neck and moving to the basement of the house to see what was up with the niffler these past few days. Loki kissed Elaine on the cheek as she showed him a pouty, teary face. Don't worry, Elaine, Big Brother will be back in a bit, Loki said, trying to console the little girl who was crying and depressed. But I won, Big Bewather, Elaine said cutely as she shook her head, refusing Loki's plans. Loki felt a twinge of regret in his heart, but since he knew this was for the betterment of Elaine, he wrapped his arms around Elaine and hugged her tightly. Come on, little sis, I know you can do it. I promise it will be fun at Aunt Cassandra's place. But I won, Big Bewather. Ah, how about this, I will meet you every Christmas, Loki said with a soft smile, wiping away the tears on Elaine's face. Sniffle, sniffle. But the little girl shook her head with a frown. All right, I understand you want to be with your big brother. How about using this? Loki said, handing over a silver mirror polished to shine. What is this, Big Bewather? Elaine asked cutely as she wiped away the snot which was leaking from her slightly red nose. This will allow you to always talk to me when you want to. It is a two-way mirror, Loki said with a smile as he showed his own copy of the mirror. Two-way mirror? Elaine asked, shaking the mirror. Yes, look at this. Pouring a little bit of his spirituality into the mirror, Loki pointed it at his face, much like when phones were used for video calling. Big BW other is in the mirror, Elaine shouted, surprised as she looked at Loki in the mirror. Yes, little sis, you can talk to me while using the mirror. See, I can see you in my mirror, Loki said, showing Elaine his own mirror with her face on it. How do I talk to Big BW other? Elaine asked, and Loki complied by going a little far away from Elaine, and when she attempted to follow him he asked her to wait outside the room, which saddened her a bit, but Loki was quick. Elaine, look here, can you hear me? Elaine's head instantly snapped toward the mirror in her hand as she spotted Loki's face in it, waving his hand and talking to her. Big BW other, Elaine shouted excitedly. She tried to touch her brother's face in the mirror but couldn't, since it was just a reflection. You can talk to me like this, Elaine, Loki said with a soft smile and pulled out his spirituality from the mirror, powering off the connection that allowed them to talk to each other. Elaine felt a little unhappy at seeing Loki vanishing from her mirror, but she calmed down when Loki appeared through the door he'd just gone away. "Did you like it?" Loki asked Elaine, but she pouted at him and turned away. Seeing his sister was playing hard to get, he did the best thing he knew to get her mood up and high again. "Who's angry with Big Bewather?" Loki said, mimicking how Elaine spoke. "Who's angry with Big Bewather?" Loki asked Elaine as he reached around her and began to lightly poke her tummy. "Who's angry with Big Bewather?" Loki asked again, but this time he started to drag his finger across her stomach and under her armpits. "Elaine is," Loki said happily as he began to tickle Elaine and pushed her around while she laughed until she felt her stomach split. "Big Bewather, stop it," Elaine shouted, but Loki continued to tickle her. With Elaine laughing, her mood was soon refreshed, but she still looked a little sad at the prospect of leaving her big brother and going off with an aunt she didn't know all alone. Loki was equally sad when he noticed this, but refrained from bringing up the topic since Elaine was already unhappy and it was quite hard to bring up her mood. With Elaine's mood fixed, Loki spent the rest of the week with her, going to different places around London and playing with her so that she would have the best time of her life. She even got to eat 2 chocolates a day since she was going to leave Loki soon. Loki during these days spent a lot of his time writing the do's and don'ts so that Trelawney wouldn't have to figure out Elaine's likes and dislikes from scratch by going in blind. He wrote up what looked like a mini booklet that was titled, "Elaine in a Nutshell." Does she even need this? Isn't she a prophet? I'm sure she can do without it, but just in case she needs a little extra boost. At the end of the week, Trelawney arrived at the Black home and waited with Creature to meet Loki and Elaine. Cassandra and Loki spoke for a while, but Loki could clearly feel that Cassandra was holding something back, yet Loki felt that their conversation was fruitful. "Since you taught at Hogwarts before, could you tell me about the Beander gathering circles which are there?" Loki asked, hoping to get some insider information. "No, Hogwarts is his domain now. There are no reliable Beander gatherings in the school. It is hard enough for anyone other than those in his faction to survive in the school. Creating a Beander gathering that goes against his laws would be like spitting in his face." Cassandra shook her head. "But students above the 4th year are given, let's say, a few opportunities. The school works with the ministry, specifically the Unspeakables, to allow children from the 28 noble families to attend missions if they're Beanders. But even that is quite hard to do if you're not in his faction. You can't even take his name." Loki asked, shocked. "Sometimes it is better not to know things before you are capable enough," Cassandra explained. "At least I know that there is someone dangerous in the school. Hopefully, I don't get caught by him. It's a shame that Beander gatherings are not allowed in the school, but now that I think about it, I can still run the tarot card club without anyone noticing anything wrong." "Are you ready?" Trelawney asked Loki, and although it seemed to anyone else that Trelawney was asking about Elaine, Loki could feel that she was alluding to more than she was letting on. "Yes," Loki responded with a steely expression, since he was ready to bear whatever burdens were going to come his way. "After all, it's not like I can say goodbye to the Beander world now. Not after I've already become a Beander who has become a part of the mad world that is sure to be filled with crazy adventures. Bye-bye, Elaine," Loki said after a short hug he gave to Elaine. "Bye-bye, Big Bewather. Make sure to talk to me every day," Elaine said cutely, causing Loki to feel dizzy from the cuteness overload. "I promise," Loki said, forming a pinky promise with Elaine. "Make sure not to trouble Auntie Trelawney." "Okay, Big Bewather." With that done, Loki saw off Trelawney and Elaine with a slightly downcast and longing gaze. But now that everything was done, Loki slapped his cheeks a few times to get into the mood and began to follow the next steps of his plan. "Creature!" Loki shouted, causing Creature to teleport into the hallway with a loud pop. "Are my things packed?" Loki asked calmly. "Yes, Master." Creature nodded. "Good, then teleport me to that place." "Are you sure you want to do this, Master?" Creature asked, and Loki explained with a smile on his face. "I'm not strong enough yet, Creature. Once I am, I won't take such demeaning measures. I've got to keep the reputation of the Black family after all." "I understand, Master." Creature said and nodded before holding Loki's outstretched hands and teleporting with him to the burnt-down shack that Loki used to live in with Elaine. You may leave, Creature, Loki said with a slight nod and allowed Creature to leave. Changing into a few old dull clothes, Loki now fit in with the house well and looked like just any other street rat in the eastern part of town. Well, let's begin the plan to swindle everyone to buy time. Time for my growth and time for gaining power. With a determined gaze, Loki looked at the horizon as if anticipating a new morning to wash him over the next day, giving his life a new turn for the better. Putting away his notes that he had conjured up inside the Saphira castle, Loki relaxed back in his chair as he held his head and went through all that he had revised while inside the Sephiroth. Peculiar, Loki said. How very peculiar. Loki looked at the seemingly normal ruby ring that was lying on the table and picked it up. Covering it in his spirituality, Loki waited for a few seconds and immediately after, a soft blue glow covered the entire ring. The glow was not an aura per se, although it did look like it, but upon closer inspection, Loki could see several tiny shimmering shapes deliberately scratched into the ring's body. What are these? Loki wondered out loud. He had discovered them by accident when he was casting magic in his way, by just throwing out his spirituality until a pattern formed by luck and his intent caused the magic. He was wearing the ring and occasionally his spirituality clouded the ring and caused the scratches to show up because they were glowing. Are these runes? Loki made an educated guess. But why did they look so familiar? They look like the illustrations of wand movements in the book in Black Manor. Sigh, I can't read books from the Black Manor anymore until I receive my letter from Hogwarts. This would have been so much simpler otherwise. Maybe I can ask Creature to bring me a book. Nah, I don't want to take risks. Who knows what they Quill might write down otherwise. Or runes just wand movement patterns. But does this mean that all magic can be written down and performed like that? My spirituality has almost drained, let's keep this problem for later. Loki nodded to himself and willed to end the ritual, keeping him inside the Saphira castle. As soon as Loki arrived in his body, however, he noticed something peculiar on the window near him. Hoot hoot. Hello little birdie, Loki said with a calm smile and moved to pet the bird spirit. The rather small owl hooted in satisfaction and put up its leg that was holding onto the letter, expecting Loki to free its burden. Loki pulled the letter by softly prying away the claws of the owl and looked at it with a sparkle in his eyes. Huh, I'm going to a magical school, Loki said excitedly, swinging about. After giving the little owl a bit of his bread which it affectionately pecked on while standing on the window sill, Loki began to observe the letter carefully. On the front, written in emerald green ink, were the words, "To Loki, the first floor of the burnt house on Cromwell Road, Worley." On the back of the letter was the Hogwarts coat of arms impressioned in lac, keeping the letter sealed. The Hogwarts coat of arms seal was divided into 4 quadrants, containing a badger on the bottom left, a raven on the bottom right, a lion on the top left and a serpent on the top right. Underneath the crest were the words, Draco Dormiens Nunquam Titalandus, which Loki immediately translated as, never tickle a sleeping dragon. Huh, never tickle a sleeping dragon. That's a bit random, is it not? Did they have dragons at Hogwarts? Loki mumbled but then pried open the seal with his fingers, taking great care not to damage the letter in any way. Pulling out the yellow parchment in the ancient-looking envelope, Loki read the first letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorc, CHF. Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confed, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Loki, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. A teacher will be at your home tomorrow afternoon, the 30th of June, at 12:30 p.m. Please be ready to meet with them and go shopping for your supplies as you are from a Muggle, non-magical family. Term begins on the 1st of September. We await your owl by no later than the 31st of July. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. Seeing the letter in his hands, Loki felt a great deal of joy and he couldn't believe his eyes, but the weight of the letter in his hands was enough to keep him calm. How is this Dumbledore person able to manage so many titles? Isn't he very busy? How does he perform his headmaster duties? But then Loki noticed the name at the bottom of the letter. He seems to have left the letter duties to the deputy headmistress Minerva McGonagall. Poor lady, she must have had to do so much more work than him. Oh wait, couldn't she just have magicked a quill to do it for her? And what's with this? Family, business, didn't they know I was an orphan? So insensitive. Moving on to the second sheet of the paper, Loki found himself recognizing a few things from when Walburga trained him and also from the Black Manor Library. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 3 sets of plain work robes black, 1 plain pointed hat black, for day wear 1 pair of protective gloves dragon hide or similar, 1 winter cloak black, with silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells Grade 1 by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Felida Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment. 1 wand. 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2. 1 set glass or crystal phials. 1 telescope. 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring, if they desire, an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomstick. Yours sincerely, Lucinda Thompsonical Pocus, Chief Attendant of Witchcraft Provisions. I can imagine why a few people must think of this as a scam or an elaborate joke. Loki mumbled, but there was a shine in his eyes that nothing could hide. The author of the Magical Plants book is named Spore. A sudden flapping of wings notified Loki of the departure of the small owl that had delivered him the good news, which he followed as far as he could until midway through, Loki saw the owl vanish into a slip in space and time. It went into the spirit world. But then left alone, Loki's brain cooked up various different scenarios. Loki giggled like a madman. He imagined him becoming the Lord of the Mysteries and taking over the Hogwarts castle, defeating a dragon along with his Niffler and performing such miraculous spells that would leave everyone including the headmaster stunned. He remained drowned in his overactive imagination until he fell asleep curled in a fetal position with a prominent smile on his face. I will be the greatest wizard of all time. I'm going to be the best. Midway through his sleep, Loki found himself in a dream where he traveled back in time to meet the Hogwarts founders and beat them up with a happy smile. Cracking his spine, Loki stood ready for his day as he waited for the professor to arrive by the door. Will she arrive using a broom? Will she arrive teleporting like Walburga? Or will she arrive using the night bus? Loki was getting more and more excited with each thought as he hurriedly tapped his feet on the porch waiting for the time to turn 12:30 so that he could begin his magical journey. As the time approached 12:30, Loki with his spirit vision active spotted a man dressed like a bat glide across the street. That man is rich. Loki concluded because, in the view of his spiritual intuition, the man glowed like a lighthouse. Is that why he's dressed so strangely? Almost like he's a vampire bat. But what is he doing here? A rich person in East London. Doesn't suit him. Is he lost? Loki wondered when he spotted the man looking around the houses with confusion. But after seeing the man walk towards a dark house that was painted charcoal black, Loki lost his interest in the man. Maybe some rich guy who was separated from his family during birth. Loki concluded, his mind picking up the plot of the soap opera in the Daily Prophet he had read back in the Black Manor. Is the teacher late? Loki wondered as he looked at the sun in the sky that was at its peak. Maybe that Dumble's guy doesn't pay his teachers well and has overburdened them with the task of visiting the homes of a lot of students. Poor teachers can't even take a little rest. I knew it, People like him with a lot of titles let power get to their heads and don't care about the masses. Flash. A flash of bright red light and then lime green light erupted from the home that the bat-like man had entered, grabbing Loki's attention. Huh, what happened there? Loki asked out loud to no one in particular. Moving across the street, Loki walked with carefully measured steps so that he could leave at the first sign of trouble. That light, it seemed familiar. Like the one Walburga used all those months ago. Loki, hiding behind the fence of bushes in the lawn, peered into the open door. And what he saw next shocked him. The man in bat-like clothes was standing over the bodies of the two people on the ground, and he continued to cast a spell that left a lime green trail until it hit their heads. Gasp! Loki stumbled backwards, not due to the apparent deaths of the two people he didn't care about, but because he watched a new wizard kill two seemingly random people. Damn it! Did this have to happen today? Loki cursed in his mind as he immediately turned around to leave. Which sequence Beyander is he, and why was he attracted to my location today? Or is it a coincidence? With each question only worsening his mood, Loki's first thought was to run. As Loki took the first step to run, he inadvertently stepped on a twig and cracked it, attracting attention towards himself. A chill ran down his spine as he felt a scary gaze land on his back. Without anyone having to remind him, Loki immediately figured out that the man was now looking straight at him. What in tarnation? Loki jumped away immediately, rolling behind the bush to quickly run away from the place, but as he jumped in the air, Loki felt something hit his back and found his movements constricted. Unable to move or balance his body, Loki collapsed face first into the road, earning a couple of scratches and a bruised nose in the process. What the heck happened? Loki looked down and found himself bound by ropes, his neck bound tightly to his hands and legs while the knots were arranged on his back, an area he could barely reach. Is this it? Is this how I die? Loki thought with fear, but then remembering how Elaine was waiting for him, a newfound surge of determination rushed through him. No, I can still do it. But before Loki could seemingly get to doing anything, he found himself face to face with the man dressed like a bat. The man immediately raised his wand and pointed it at Loki, but Loki said something that caused him to freeze in his tracks. I know what you are. You're a wizard, aren't you? Loki shouted out loud. The man was still pointing his wand at Loki, but there was a slight confusion in his eyes. Speak. The man said, giving Loki permission to speak. You just used the killing curse, didn't you? I've seen it used before. It's all right, I won't tell anyone about it. In fact, I can even compensate you with a lot of money if you let me go. Loki argued. But the reaction of the man was not something Loki expected. The man just stood there as if a little shocked as his eyebrows twitched. This is a Miz. Swoosh. Ha ha. See you, sucka. Fight me like a man if you dare next time. Loki had freed himself from the ropes using his dexterous fingers as he tossed the sand and gravel from the road into the man's eyes with his feet. Loki immediately set off running, moving as fast as he could to escape away from the bat-like man. I just have to turn there and I'll be out of his sight for good. Loki reasoned and immediately halted his running body and ducked low to redirect it to jump into another street. But right as Loki jumped, something once again struck him in the chest. Loki's hands and feet were bound together, sticking to his sides as he became as stiff as a wooden plank. He collapsed on the dirty road, left only with the ability to move his eyes as his mind collapsed into despair once again. Not long after, the man dressed like a bat arrived beside Loki, casting a shadow over him. This is a misunderstanding. The man spat out venomously, as if speaking each word itself was a burden he was not willing to undertake. Loki tried to make noises to express his dissatisfaction, but everything in his body felt like it had been frozen stiff. Now if you would only stay like that for the duration of my next tasks, this will be easier, the man said, waving his wand and causing Loki to float beside him as if he were a frozen doll. Under Loki's surprised gaze, the man moved back to the charcoal black house and shot a spell from far away. As the spell struck the two people on the floor, they surprisingly got back up and began to go about their jobs without any fuss. After which the man looked around the street once again, until he spotted Loki's burnt house and moved towards it. Leaving Loki on the floor, the man cast another spell silently and caused Loki to finally unfreeze and become normal. What did you do? How did you resurrect them? Loki asked with caution and fear as he moved back towards a wall, putting as much distance he could between himself and the scary wizard man. It hadn't been long and Loki had already primed his spirituality to take out the man should the opportune moment arise. Looking at the man with clear fear in his eyes, Loki repeated his question to the man who liked to be mum. What did you do? How did you resurrect them? That was not a resurrection, Mr. Loki. The man said with a faint glimmer in his eyes like he remembered something terrible. But seeing Loki still unrelenting in his question, he continued to speak. I stunned them to wipe away their memories of magic. Wipe their memories of magic? Huh, why? I am Severus Snape, Potion Master at Hogwarts. The man interrupted, spitting the words slowly in a rhythmic fashion as if he were speaking a poem. Quote. Loki froze in his tracks as everything suddenly clicked in his mind. You went to the wrong house and showed them magic. Loki accused. Snape's eyebrows twitched at the mention of his embarrassing mistake, but he said nothing to acquit himself. Instead he spoke in a disgruntled tone. While extending his own hand. So you did make a mistake. It's all right, it happens with everyone. Loki said, patting Snape's hand and trying to comfort him. But before Loki could spout another word from his mouth and dig the grave he was in even deeper, his figure twisted along with Snape as they disappeared in a loud pop. Huh, you can teleport. I thought you were a potions master. Loki asked, starting to talk again as soon as he adjusted to the swimming feeling that had taken over his body. Follow me quietly. Snape raised his eyebrows at how fast Loki had gotten used to the feeling of apparition, but ushered in a hushed whisper as his cloak bellowed behind him. Are you using magic to make your cloak float behind you? It isn't touching the ground. Loki asked in a whisper similar to Snape's tone. Snape shot him an unsatisfied glare but did not stop walking. What is this place? Why are we here? Loki asked, pretending to be confused while looking around. Diagon Alley. To buy your school supplies. Snape responded without looking at Loki. Of course, he knew this place and a lot more about the one next to it, since he had been there earlier in the year. But for the sake of his plan, Loki continued to pretend as if this was all new. Where are we going first? Flourish and blots. Snape said curtly, already tired of talking so much. Entering the store, Loki found himself surrounded by books, stacks upon stacks of books. Although not as large and expansive as the library in the Black Manor, it's still impressive. But before Loki could wander off and get lost among the wares of the store, Snape pulled Loki along with himself, moving to the counter at the back. The storekeeper instantly recognized Snape and greeted him with a nod. Good afternoon, Professor Snape. Snape just nodded. Do you need the set of first-year books for Hogwarts, Professor? The storekeeper asked as he spotted Loki holding Snape's hand. Yes, Snape said, pulling out a few gold galleons from the pouch on his belt to drop onto the counter. The shopkeeper pulled out a stack of books that were tied into a bundle using a rope from under the table and handed it over to Snape. Snape only nodded his head, picked up the books and stuffed them into the pouch on his waist. Loki looked longingly at the books in the store and even more longingly at the pouch on Snape's waist, but Snape did not allow him to linger any further and dragged him out with him. Where are we going next? Loki asked giddily. Uniforms. Snape said in a monotone voice while they entered the clothing store in front of them, Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Hello there, little one. You look very lacking in the fashion department. Are you here to buy Hogwarts robes, dear? Madame Malkin asked politely, brushing Loki's wild hair in the process. Yes, ma'am. Loki nodded his head after getting validation from Snape. Magical tape measures were activated at the wave of her wand as Madame Malkin helped Loki stand on a short wooden stool. Loki looked curiously at the magical display and pretended to feel a little overjoyed that he could witness something magical. It wasn't hard since he really was a little amazed at self-measuring tapes. What is your name, dear? I need it for the labels on your clothes. Loki. Loki said with a soft smile. That's a nice name. Are you going to be a little troublemaker? Madame Malkin laughed a little at her own joke and then said, I will be back with your robes shortly, dear, leaving to go to the back of the store where she would stitch robes according to Loki's sizes. Just then, a sleek white-haired man dressed in dark black robes entered the store holding the hands of a little boy around Loki's age having the same white hair. The white-haired man's eyes scanned the shop and paused at Snape with shock. Hurrying quickly through the store, Loki saw the man drag his child along while shifting through the clothes on display arriving beside Snape. "Severus, what are you doing?" the man began to ask but paused when he saw Loki standing with his arms outstretched waiting for Madame Malkin to return and give him his clothes. "Have you stooped so low, Severus?" the white-haired man asked Snape as he looked at Loki with disgust. Seeing the clear hatred the man had for him, Loki attempted to smile to give off a good impression, but it seemed to have only disgusted the man further as he took a step back along with the little boy who was a spitting image of him. "What are you?" the small boy asked. Not liking how he was being treated by the two, Loki's expression warped into a frown. "You still smell of your mother's milk, brat, go away from here." Loki cursed at the boy, trying out the most recent curse he had learned from Trelawney's letter. Snape's eyebrows twitched but he said nothing, except the white-haired man spoke with distaste. "I knew it was a bad idea to come here. I just can't believe that the standards of Hogwarts and this store have fallen so low. Come on, Draco, let's go." "Yes, father," the young boy said, walking away from Loki with a face that had turned blue with anger. Loki could almost bet that he had seen Draco smell himself and scrunch up his nose, after which he asked his father something. "I'm sorry for the loss to your business, madam," Loki said, bowing politely toward Madame Malkin, who Loki could see was standing just a little away. "Oh, don't worry, I would take a cute boy like you over arrogant pricks any time of the day," Madame Malkin said with a smile and patting Loki's head. "Here are your robes, dear." Snape took them and stored them along with the other things in his pouch and moved out of the store with Loki. "I'll be back later, Madame Malkin. Thank you for having us," Loki shouted as Snape pulled him along. Taking him to another store, Snape helped Loki purchase a trunk and got his name etched into the leather of the trunk. "Finally, I get my own wand," Loki exclaimed in his mind, excited about the prospect of waving his own mini reality-altering stick as they stood in front of a shop that said, "Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A curious purple pillow lay in the front window upon which was a short brown wand pointing towards the street. "Will that be my wand?" Loki shouted in his mind, excited and even slightly trembling, wondering how he would finally get to be a full-fledged wizard. Arriving at her new home along with Cassandra, Elne stood behind her by holding her dress. She was apprehensive of the new place. The voice of children laughing and playing hung in the air, but Elaine felt shy and embarrassed to go and talk to any of the kids just behind the gate. Elaine looked up at Cassandra with a little apprehension and slightly teary eyes. "They won't hurt you," Cassandra said with a smile as she brushed Elaine's hair so that it looked decent. Walking up along with Cassandra, Elaine soon found herself in front of all the kids who were busy playing on the various rides like the seesaw, the swings, and the merry-go-round. Most kids were very busy, but suddenly a girl, similarly sized, saw Elaine and walked up to her with a smile. "Hello," the girl said enthusiastically and moved around Cassandra to catch the girl trying to hide from her. Elaine felt a little afraid, so she held onto Cassandra tighter, but with a slight push of confidence from her, Elaine stepped ahead. The girl immediately came closer and introduced herself. "I'm Kathy." "You are." "My name is Elaine. My big brother's name is Loki. If you do anything to me, he'll beat you up," Elaine said, closing her eyes with fear, but when she suddenly heard all the playing children fall silent, she squinted her eyes open. To her surprise, all the children in the park had immediately gathered around her and Cassandra. "Loki?" Kathy asked with shock, and Elaine just nodded quickly. The children immediately looked up at Cassandra and asked over each other, "Is it him?" Cassandra only nodded softly. "Whoa!" Suddenly everyone in the crowd cheered and came closer to Elaine and gripped her hand. "If anyone troubles you, tell me about it. Everyone here fears me. Ah. My name's John, by the way. Don't listen to him, no one is afraid of John. He's scared of bugs too. If you ever want more food, come over to me." I always keep a few treats hidden from everyone to snack on later. Elaine, come with me. Seeing Elaine shrinking because of the sudden crowd around her, Cathay grabbed Elaine's hand and rushed towards the orphanage building along with her. They eventually reached the roof and sat down on the terrace. Pant. Haha, sorry about that. Everyone is a little excited to hear your brother's name. Elaine had a puzzled expression, but a thought struck her and she nodded. Of course, they know Big Bewather's name. He's awesome. Haha, yes, he is. He gave the orphanage so much money last month. We all got new toys because of him. As soon as the topic shifted to talking about Loki, Elaine was no longer shy. She began to speak about all the things she and Loki had done. She was so lost in describing everything that she didn't realize other people had come to the roof after her and Kathy and were now listening to her tales. It seemed like everyone was eager to know more about Loki for some reason. Stepping into the shop, Loki was left feeling unnerved. Not the sort of unnerving that you had before you stood on a stage or the one that happened while you waited for the results of your exam as they were being posted. But the sort of unnerving one had when they realized that they had swum too deep into the swimming pool and they would be out of breath if they tried to swim back up and would drown. His breathing hitched as he felt like he was being picked apart and analyzed, but Loki stood his ground. But then as soon as Snape stepped forward and covered him by arriving between him and the something else analyzing him, the feeling vanished. Or did it shift? Stepping out from the darkness behind them was a crazy-looking man who seemed like he hadn't shaved in a few days. Gray stubble dotted his face along with the rather long graying hair that covered the bald spot on the crown of his head. His eyes were like two full moons, white, glassy and sparkly. The man spoke in barely above a whisper, yet his voice was heard clearly by both Loki and Snape. "Hello, young one. Here to begin your magical journey." Loki turned around pointedly and looked at the man, but immediately felt a slight suppression which caused Loki's eyes to sharpen. "He's a Beander. And someone powerful. A demigod." "Haha, yes," Loki said awkwardly, trying to compensate for the weird chill he was feeling running down his spine. "Why does it feel like I am being dissected on the table of some mad scientist? And since when did Beanders become as common as cabbages? Especially a demigod. Is everyone related to Hogwarts a Beander? I'm here to get myself a wand, sir, aren't I, Professor Snape?" Loki said, trying to get rid of his fear by depending on Snape. Snape looked at Loki's expression and understood what he was trying to do, but just nodded silently and offered no warmth. "Then I shall bring you a wand, young man, but remember, it is not the wizard that chooses the wand but the wand that chooses the wizard," Ollivander said with a cryptic smile. He moved to shift through the endless stacks and series of intricately designed dusty boxes that all held different wands. With a snap of Ollivander's fingers, the tape measure in the shop began measuring everything about Loki. The length of his forearm, the distance between his nostrils, and also the length of his fingers and eye sockets. Ollivander paid attention to it at the beginning, looking at where the tape measure stopped, and once he was satisfied with a few measurements, he moved toward the towering stacks of boxes that were neatly arranged in a pile. Is he able to figure out what the tape is stopping at by listening to the number of clicks it makes while being pulled out? Crazy. Pulling out a box from in between a tall pile without allowing it to collapse, Ollivander moved towards Loki and opened the box in front of him. Unicorn hair and sycamore wood. Common but a trusty companion. Loki gently wrapped his fingers around the wand, but before he could comfortably hold the wand in his palm, Ollivander pried it out of his hands. No. This felt wrong. Moving back to the pile of boxes, Ollivander pulled out a new one and opened the box in front of Loki, Dragonheart string and willow wood. A powerful, strong companion that will protect you when you most need it. Loki was allowed to properly hold the wand this time, but even he felt a slight dissonance between himself and the wand, which Ollivander no doubt noticed too since he snatched it out of his hands. "No, you don't need something stable. You will do well with something strange. Experimental wands perhaps." Pulling out several boxes from the base of the pile, Ollivander cleared a bit of space before pushing his hand deep into the pile and pulling out a fancy box that felt comical. This is one I made in my earlier days, its core is the tail feather of a jobberknoll that is housed in vinewood. Loki barely lifted the wand when a red spell inadvertently shot through it and blew the pile of boxes up that Ollivander had worked too hard to keep stable. It sent papers flying along with wands that were displaced from what looked to be their little resting coffins. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ollivander." Loki immediately apologized and bowed, but Ollivander didn't hear him. "I know what you need. You need something dark, something loyal, and something no one else would like to touch." Not thinking anything of his maddened rambling, Ollivander walked into the exploded pile of boxes and pulled out a regal white bone box that had the engravings of several scary cloaked creatures on it. Opening the box and serving it to Loki, Ollivander looked at him with intense eyes. "Bone?" Loki asked, confused as he evaluated the pointy wand presented to him. But seeing Ollivander not respond, Loki turned toward Snape, who promptly nodded, signifying there was no need to worry. Loki cautiously wrapped his fingers around the white bone wand, and for a second there was nothing. No dissonance, no sparks shooting out, no explosions, everything seemed remarkably normal. But that was only for a second. Soon after, the room was drowned in a cold, unnerving atmosphere that pulled everyone inside it into a depressed mood. Loki saw Snape frown and Ollivander's smile deepen, but a feeling of dread was digging deeper into his own heart. Yet in all this depression there existed a warm feeling that kept them alight and awake. It took a while, but the depressing feeling slowly vanished and gave way to the warmth, bringing back the jolly atmosphere that had been built while Ollivander was searching for wands that would suit Loki. Ollivander, still looking at the wand Loki was holding, spoke in a calm tone. "It was a wand that had been passed down to me by my father. I don't know how long it has remained in my family, but I do know what it is made out of." "What is it made out of?" Loki asked as he felt the depressing atmosphere retreat into the wand. "It feels so depressing, yet warm. Like a rainy day paired with hot tea." Snape paid attention to the detail too, since he found it rather amusing that a wand could be so depressing yet comforting. "It would be, since it is made out of the bone of a Dementor with a unicorn core. It is an error. Two components that would generally detest each other, working together," Ollivander explained, and handed the bone box the wand had stayed in back to Loki. "An error?" Snape questioned. "Yes, the Dementor this bone was taken from was being experimented on. It was trapped in a box with a Patronus charm for the better portion of its life until then. Given its immortality, the experiment caused it to lose its mind. Yet its captor did not release it, and used it to perform a ritual by bathing it in unicorn blood." A somber silence different from the depressing one that had lingered in the air until now filled the shop, but Loki's curiosity broke it. What happened then? What happened to the man doing the ritual? What happened to the Dementor? The Dementor, unable to die, was isolated by the Ministry until it was fit to return to duty in Azkaban, when it was found. "And the man?" Snape asked. "From the stories passed down in my family, it is said that out of his various experiments with death, he became its ruler." "Well, mostly that is," Ollivander said with an amused smile. "Mostly. What happened to the rest?" Loki pointed out. But Ollivander did not respond verbally. Instead, he chose to silently point at the bone box Loki was holding. Loki felt disgust at holding the bone box but did not drop it. Paying Ollivander his 7 galleons, Snape exited the shop with Loki in tow. "Have a nice day, Professor Snape." Ollivander let them leave with a soft greeting. Returning to the street after exiting the store, Loki was glad that the noises all around returned. It had been too quiet in the store for his taste. "Are we going to get a pet next, Professor Snape?" Loki asked politely. "No. Hogwarts does not provide funds for a pet." "Are you sure, Professor? Or do they not pay you enough that you need to steal funds from my—" Snap. Snape hit the back of Loki's head with a rolled-up sheet of newspaper, causing him to sit in the middle of the road, holding his head while looking at Snape accusingly. Walking out of the brick wall that was refixing itself to appear like a normal dirty brick wall, Snape turned around and stood to look at Loki. "Tap the brick 3 up from the trash can and 2 across to enter Diagon Alley on your own next time," Snape said, showing Loki the proper way to enter Diagon Alley at the end of their trip. "Are you leaving me here?" Loki asked Snape with fake teary eyes. Snape looked at Loki with a frown, and before the little troublemaker could question anything else, placed his hand on his shoulder and disappeared from the spot with a pop. Arriving on the same street from where they had left, Snape dropped Loki off at his home along with all the things he had purchased and a ticket to platform 9 3/4 on King's Cross Station. "So I just run into the pillar and I will be on the other side?" Loki asked for confirmation one last time, and Snape nodded, still as silent as ever. "I see then, thank you and goodbye, Professor Snape. I hope to see you again at Hogwarts," Loki said with a slight nod of his head, but Snape didn't extend the courtesy. Seeing Snape staring at him indulgently, Loki wondered if he had to do something. "I'm sorry I don't have tea in the house, Professor," Loki asked. "Where did you see a wizard using the killing curse before?" Snape asked with his strangely poetic rhythm. Loki's eyes widened, but he promptly explained, "In my line of work you sometimes happen to see strange things, Professor." Seeing Snape look at him like he owed him something, Loki explained further. "I steal from houses to fill my stomach. My partner just happened to enter the wrong house one day. And I happened to see what happens when a person comes in contact with a green beam of light that day. I was probably lucky to escape. I want to remember the house number or address, but for some reason, I can't seem to recollect it." Snape nodded with cold eyes and turned around, departing from the scene with light steps, walking away with his cloak billowing behind him. Phew, that was close. Loki wondered and wiped the sweat off his brows. With Snape gone, Loki relaxed a little and moved inside the house to the spot where he'd left the communication mirror that he used to speak with Elaine. "Big Bewather," Elaine shouted out loud as soon as Loki picked up the mirror. "Have you not left the mirror's side, Elaine?" I was waiting for Big Bewather all day." "I see. What did you do while waiting for me?" Loki asked with a small smile, since he kept thinking about how cute Elaine looked while focusing her brows to think about her day. Spending some time talking to Elaine, Loki unwinded during the conversation. "They sure are treating Elaine well. Though, I'm sure no one could ever dislike her because of how adorable she is." And after he was done, when Elaine fell asleep talking to him, Loki whispered a simple name, Creature. Pop. With a soft pop, Creature appeared right in front of Loki and bowed deeply. "At your service, Master. Creature, can you take me back home along with all this stuff?" Loki said, pointing at the large trunk full of stuff that was lying between him and Creature. "No problem, Master." Holding both Loki's hands and the handle of the trunk, Creature apparated once again, this time reaching the living room in black manner. "Please leave my bag in my room, Creature," Loki said, leaving Creature to his job, and moving to the washroom, where he took a proper shower and cleaned off the dirt and grime that had accumulated on him during the month he had left the Black Manor to live in his burnt house. Refreshed after the shower, Loki sat down in his chair and began to ponder on all that had happened today. Seeing how Professor Snape did not have any bad reaction to my wand, I guess although it is a strange wand, it is not anything too suspicious, Loki said, twirling his wand around in his fingers. His wand was white, one end of the wand resembled a bone joint while the other end was pointy, enough that he could stab into someone and expect it to pierce through their body. The wand thrummed with power in his hands and Loki loved holding it. It felt like it was a part of himself, an extension of his abilities, and something that he would dearly come to love. Wrapping his spirituality around the wand, Loki noticed a few runes outside, but he felt that most of the work was hidden inside where the unicorn hair was. Flicking his wand, Loki chanted, Wingardium Leviosa. Loki felt the wand draw his spirituality and paint a pattern with it in the air, much like a printer printing. It was automatic and functioned purely by his intent. And after a moment, when the appropriate figure was drawn, Loki found the book on the table in front of him rising. It rose slowly as Loki flicked his wand and began to rise higher and higher into the air. A sense of fulfillment appeared in Loki's mind as he watched the book fly. "It's so much less taxing on my spirituality to use a wand. It's so easy. Almost too easy. I can see why even the great mages in the stories in the Black Family Library used wands. It truly is a tool that can help to perform magic that is leaps and bounds beyond their ability. But how does the wand know what shape to mold the person's spirituality into? Loki spent the rest of the night experimenting with the wand, trying out different spells and performing to the best of his ability while trying to stay awake since the day had passed its toll on him and his stamina. One last stray thought passed by Loki's mind: magic. It's so magical. Before he fell asleep in the library sitting on his chair while his head lay on the table. Miles away in a castle, Snape entered the headmaster's office. "Ah, Severus. Why are you here? Seeing how you're here, I presume your work went well today." Snape did not respond but kept his focus on the old wizard in front of him and spoke silently through his thin unmoving lips. "The student who I took to Ollivanders today received a peculiar wand." "Peculiar? How so?" the old wizard asked. "It was made using the bone of a Dementor and the core of a unicorn." "Is that so?" the old man asked, staring off into the distance like he could see miles into the future or the past at the same time. "I see." The old man nodded. "It's a shame that I missed it. But don't worry about it. I'm sure the young man's fate doesn't interfere with anything we've planned. Maybe you can guide him as you see fit. Perhaps he might even become a student you come to like." Snape scowled but didn't say anything. "Is there anything else, Severus?" Snape did not respond, and after giving the headmaster one last look, he turned around and left the office, his cloak billowing behind him. "Do I really have to wear this creature?" Loki asked, looking down at the expensive three-piece suit he was wearing. "This doesn't look that good. Are you sure this is right? Wouldn't something green, violet and pink look better?" Creature placed his hands on his face and sighed in frustration, but then looked up at Loki with a sagely smile and said, "If Master hears a single complaint about his clothes, Creature will hang his own head on the wall." Really? In that case, all right." Loki nodded, deciding to place his trust in Creature since he was so sure. Stepping out of the room, Loki walked professionally towards the main door. But as he looked back at the entire house from the inside, he felt a little emotional, especially as he looked at the basement. His gaze then paused at the portrait of Walburga that was hung up on the wall in between the stairs. Loki saw her pour herself some tea and sip on it elegantly. The sadness in his eyes was clear, yet he firmed his heart and closed his eyes. "You can do it, Loki. You've got this." "King's Cross, right?" Loki asked Creature. "Yes, Master. Your hand, please." Loki held Creature's hands while Creature held Loki's trunk, and in the blink of an eye, they vanished from the hallway. Opening his eyes, Loki found himself in front of an ancient-looking red train, yet he found himself captivated by it. "Is this it? The start of my inevitable journey to greatness?" Loki looked beside him for Creature, but he had already left. So Loki whispered a thanks that was lost in the noise of the bustling station. Tugging at the trunk, Loki found himself unable to lift it with ease, so he looked around a little and pulled out the wand from his pocket. "Wingardium Leviosa," Loki mumbled with a swish and flick. The trunk lifted a little and Loki was glad that he'd practiced the spell before. This is a lifesaver. With the trunk as light as a feather, Loki waltzed into the train while holding it, walking with pride in his step. As he searched around the train compartments for any empty seats, Loki reached the start of the train just behind what he guessed was the prefect's compartment. Is this the only empty compartment? Maybe it's because I'm a little late. Loki thought as he pulled out his pocket watch and looked at the time. It was 10:45 a.m. As long as no one gets into my compartment, it'll be fine. Entering the compartment, Loki made sure to stuff his trunk at the top and he finally relaxed into the luxurious seat. Isn't it a little stuffy in here? How did the windows open? After figuring out the window, with a smug smile, Loki turned his attention to the matter most urgent. Now to check out my spoils. With a wave of his hand, Loki pulled out a bunch of notes and coins from his pockets. A total of 8 pounds and 2 galleons. A fruitful harvest. Poor kids, I'm taking their pocket money. Especially that blonde kid. As if I will feel bad. Serves him right for talking down on me like that in Madame Malkin's store. And I have a better plan on how to use it anyway. Loki giggled to himself like a madman, but then he heard a sharp click and stopped. Who's there? Loki asked, looking at the door that slid open. You're not supposed to lock them. That's against the rules. A girl with wild bushy hair and buck teeth stood there. And I don't like her already. Loki concluded. Did you not hear me? I said you're not supposed to lock it. The prefect's compartment is right here. It's good that I caught you before them. Otherwise, you would have gotten scolded. The little girl with bushy hair waltzed into the compartment with her trunk and sat down opposite to Loki with her arms folded and her cheeks puffed. That seat is taken, Loki said in a bland tone. I don't see anyone else here. The girl argued. That's because they were going to arrive a little later. It's all right, I came here first and there is no rule in the book that says seats can be reserved. You don't have a lot of friends, do you? Loki finally snapped. It's not like you have any. The little girl snapped back. Huh? What do you know? I have friends, dangerous ones. Did you know my last friend caused 2 people to die simply by waving his wand a little? What? The little girl screamed. Yes, and then he resurrected them too. How? Exactly, so it's better you leave now. Or I'm going to tell him about you. HMPF. As if. The little girl said, clearly annoyed. She assumed Loki was just telling tall tales to make her leave. Loki sighed lightly and closed his eyes. Damn, not even Professor Snape scares her. But well, I guess it's only fair, since half of his aura comes from his billowing cloak, something I don't have. Why did you keep your money out? Loki suddenly heard the little girl speak and opened his eyes. Why does it matter to you? Fine, keep your secrets. The little girl said and pulled out a book from her trunk and began to read. Satisfied with the result, Loki politely went back to arranging his money. The train soon started and Loki found himself with nothing to do. What is she reading? Hogwarts: A History by Bathilda Bagshot. Didn't she also write a book on our list? Wasn't it something like A History of Magic or something? Nerd. She'll surely end up in Ravenclaw. Loki, with nothing to do, stared out the window and began to look at the passing scenery. Gradually Loki spotted the girl's reflection in the window and began to try and challenge himself to read the mirror reflection of the book she was holding. But suddenly he found the girl turning to look at the window. Why are you reading my book? The girl complained. What? I was looking outside. Loki tried to reason. I know you're looking at the reflection of my book and trying to read it. Don't annoy me. What? Loki gave up arguing with the girl and closed his eyes to lean back on the seat. HMPF. It's as if she has a problem with everything in the world. Surely now she won't have a probable. Don't sleep. It ruins my mood to read. The girl complained again, causing Loki to furiously glare at her. With nothing left to do, Loki pulled out his wand. Wingardium Leviosa. His trunk slipped out of the top shelf and floated down perfectly. Once it landed on his side of the seat, he stood up and flipped it open. After which he pulled out a book from the trunk and closed it, sending it back to the top with the same levitation spell. Sitting in his seat, Loki finally relaxed again as he began to read the book he had just pulled out. There was no cover or name on the book and it appeared to be a personal handbook of sorts, yet Loki read it with deep focus. Huh. At least now that I'm reading, she won't have any calm. How did you do that? The little girl shouted once again. Duh. How else? Magic. How did you practice beforehand? I thought we couldn't do magic outside of school. Are you from a family of wizards? Will I need to be this proficient in the spell on the first day of class? Oh no. I should have prepared more and studied the books more. Damn, this girl won't let me speak. Seeing that the girl wasn't shutting up and had begun spinning conspiracy theories about blood purity and the sort, Loki went back to reading his book. This occlumency thing, I should get it down as soon as possible so that I don't have to worry about people reading my mind. It's good that Walburga has written down her own notes on the matter. It will help me to shorten the time since I don't have to take the time like her to figure it all out. But this is rather confusing. Why is all of it written in such a confusing manner? There's so much lingo that I feel like I'm reading a research paper on some high-level topic. As Loki continued getting absorbed into his book, he formed his own conclusions and opinions on the matter. So occlumency forms mental shields by using your spirituality to form specific runes inside your body of heart and mind. But since that would only help actively, one has to train the mind to form such runes subconsciously so that the mind can always stay protected. It's a simple concept, but I'm guessing it will be hard to train such a thing. But still, runes, these damn things are everywhere, even wand movements mimic them. What exactly are these things? Such patterns just happen to produce magic. Seeing Loki hadn't spoken to her for the last little while, the girl stopped her ranting and looked at Loki with dissatisfaction. It's rude to not listen to another person when they're speaking. The little girl said. The pot calls the kettle black. Hey, don't hey me. You asked me so many questions and never let me answer, so I went back to doing what I thought was best. Why are you annoying me? The little girl looked a little hurt and had teary eyes, causing Loki to feel a little bad. Sigh, I think we started off on the wrong foot. My name is Loki, Loki said and held out his hand. The little girl was a little upset, but she quickly wiped her eyes and said with a small smile, I'm Hermione, Hermione Granger, and shook Loki's hand. Are you also a first year? Loki asked casually. Yes, and I'm the first one in my family to learn magic. That's cool. I'm the first one in my family to learn magic too. I think, Loki nodded. Do you have any brothers or sisters? Loki asked with a smile. No, I'm the only one. What about you? Hermione asked. I have a little sister, Loki said, but then paused and quickly added, she's a cousin, as he pulled out his pocket watch and flipped it open. Here she is, Loki said, showing Hermione the picture he had tapped to the inside of his pocket watch. Cute, isn't she? Ah, she looks adorable. Knock knock. A sudden knock broke the harmonious atmosphere, causing Loki and Hermione to turn towards the compartment door. What, anything from the trolley, dears? The cart lady asked, and a smirk formed on Loki's face. Could I order something for everyone on the train? Loki asked, showing her the 5 golden galleons from his pocket. Hermione's eyes widened, but she did not interrupt. That will be possible, dear. And what would you like? The cart lady said, pocketing the 5 galleons with a polite smile. A chocolate frog, for me and my friend. I see. Have a nice day, the lady said, closing the compartment door after handing Loki 2 chocolate frogs. Here, this one's for you, Loki said, giving Hermione one of the chocolate frogs. My mum and dad said that eating too many chocolates is not good for you. I'm sure there are magical solutions to rotting teeth, Hermione. Thanks, Hermione said as she began opening the box with reluctance but a little excitement. Oh, the frog jumped, Hermione shouted as she saw the frog sitting on her shoulder. Haha, they're magically animated, I think, good right? Loki asked with a slight smile, since he enjoyed watching Hermione look startled. You knew about this? Hermione asked, picking up her frog while Loki violently bit off the head of his own chocolate frog. I did, I saw them before in Diagon Alley. Did you go with a professor too? I did, it was Professor Snape for me. What about you? Professor McGonagall, Hermione replied with stars shining in her eyes. I can see you admire her. She transformed the table in our house into a pig. That's funny. Loki nodded. Meanwhile, as the 2 first years talked, in another part of the train, a white-haired boy proudly stood up in his compartment and announced, Dad gave me enough money to buy sweets for everyone. He turned towards the cart lady and then said, I would like to buy all the sweets in the cart. Seeing that she could fool a child into paying her for sweets that had already been purchased, the cart lady did not hesitate to name a price. It will be 5 galleons, dear. Yes. Here, huh? The boy stuffed his hands into his pockets but found them empty. He quickly searched for the coins in the other pockets, but there seemed to be nothing inside them. Where did my money go? The white-haired boy exclaimed out loud. It's all right, Draco, I can get it. A blonde girl spoke without emotion on her face. I'd like a chocolate frog for everyone here, please. Here you go, the cart lady said, handing the girl 5 chocolate frogs, and the girl gave the cart lady 1 galleon. As the day turned from afternoon to evening, Loki in his compartment finally stood. I think it's time. We'll be reaching soon. I'll go out so that you can change into your robes. Is that all right, my own? Yes, that's fine. I'll be quick so you can change after. No problem, don't worry about it and take your time. Loki stepped out of the compartment and waited at the door until he heard the lock inside click open. You're done? Loki asked with a polite smile. Yes. I love how the robe feels on me. It's so smooth. Did you get your robes from Madame Malkin too? Yeah, I did. Now come out and let me change. Loki entered the compartment and changed into his black robes that did not have any color on them yet. Once Hermione joined him inside, they began to talk once again, both excited that they would soon be arriving at a magical school. Which house do you want to join, Loki? Hufflepuff or Gryffindor? What about you, Myone? I want to join Ravenclaw or Gryffindor. I read that the current headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, was in Gryffindor when he was younger. I hope you do. The train slowed down and an announcement made its way throughout the train. We will arrive at Hogwarts in 15 minutes. If you have not already, you should change into your robes. Leave your trunks inside the train. They will automatically be delivered to your rooms by house elves. The train soon slowed to a stop and Loki along with Hermione exited and looked around aimlessly for the first few seconds until they heard a booming voice call out for them. Furs years. Furs, years over here. Follow me. It's him. Loki instantly recognized him as the giant man he had met in the police station, the one that had started the fire to let him escape. Although it did not go as intended, I should still thank him sometime later for trying to help me out. Trevor, you're here. Loki and Hermione watched as a droopy boy jumped into a puddle and caught a toad, drenching everyone around him in muddy water in the process. His pet's a toad. Loki mumbled loud enough for Hermione to hear. Hey, be nice. But who has a toad as a pet? Loki said jokingly, causing Hermione to sprout a hidden smile, yet she patiently explained. In Hogwarts history it is explained that the school has a choir that is led by the toads. Come on, let's go, Loki said, pulling Hermione along with him as they followed the giant man. Do you know him? Hermione asked softly. No, I don't. Do you? No. Then why are we following him? Mom told me not to follow strangers. Oh come on, Myone, you really think that giant man would do something to us? When we're so close to Hogwarts. But, shish, don't ruin the moment, Loki said as he pulled Hermione through the thicket of bushes and emerged on the other side, on an uphill that gave them a full view of what lay beyond. A lake as black as onyx and a sky as dark as midnight littered with several pearl-like stars painted the background for a giant Draculian castle whose towers pierced through the darkness and stood tall, ready to fight off any enemies. Most students remained stunned on the cliff for a while as they absorbed the beauty of their surroundings. Excuse me. A cold voice broke the students' thoughts as someone stepped through the thicket and bumped into Hermione. All the students began shuffling their feet once again as they moved down from the short hill, towards the dock built on the lake. Floating near the dock was a chain of small boats waiting for children to sit in them before moving away on their own, making way for the boats behind them so all the children could be taken to the castle. 4 students in a boat. The tall beardy man shouted once again for the students to hear. His bold words encouraged the little fearful children to jump into the boats in an orderly fashion. As the line progressed forward with the students jumping into boats, Loki, Hermione and the 2 girls who bumped into Hermione sat down in one boat by themselves. Hello, I'm Loki, who might you be? Loki said politely, extending his hand. The blonde girl looked at Loki and then murmured something to the effect of, lucky, death, misfortune, stay away, while holding her head in her hands as if a bludgeoning headache threatened to tear it apart. But she did not say anything else. She seemed off, her hands trembled occasionally like she was afraid of something about Loki, but she appeared to be doing her best not to look like she was. Shifting his hand to the other girl, Loki repeated, hello, I'm Loki, who might you be, my lady? Tracy Davis, the girl said curtly, shaking Loki's hand and going back to ignoring him. Rude much, Loki said as the tall man in the boat leading them all shouted once again, watch your heads. Once they traveled under the vines hanging from the bridge above them, all in the boat saw the gigantic castle standing tall on a cliff. The beauty captured the students, but before they could get too lost in it, a boy fell into the lake, only to be put back into the boat by a large tentacle wrapped around his waist. What is that? a pet of the castle. Reaching a stone dock under the castle, the giant man got off his boat and helped the other children out, and once everyone was out he walked up to the tall castle doors and knocked thrice on them with his giant hands, causing the chains on them to rattle. Bang asterisk bang asterisk bang. The doors opened with a creak, and behind them, surprising everyone who expected another giant man to appear, was a slightly tall woman wearing emerald green robes and a pointy witch hat with square glasses on her face. Professor McGonagall. Loki heard Hermione exclaim. The witch scanned the crowd and nodded agreeably once she spotted Hermione, and then continued to scan the crowd until the end. Once she was done, she turned towards Hagrid, who spoke out loud. The furs, years, Professor McGonagall. Thank you for bringing them here, Hagrid. I will take them from here. I understand, Professor. Hagrid said with a smile as he walked away on one of the paths that exited from the stone dock. Follow me, McGonagall said, and turned around, walking deeper into the castle as the first years all followed her like ducklings behind a mama duck. There was something about the aura around her that made all students fall in line simultaneously without any thoughts of rebellion. As they continued walking, Loki observed the various knights around the corridor that all gave him a tense feeling, like they'd step down from their posts at any moment and launch an attack on him. What do you think about them, Myone? Loki asked as he pointed towards the knights using his chin. You aren't suggesting they can move, are you? They look so realistic. But they're made out of stone. How would stone knights move? I dunno, magic, Loki said, stating the obvious. I haven't read about any such magic in Hogwarts history. What if they were just never used in history? But the castle has been through the Goblin War. What? Loki asked, puzzled. Before Hermione could explain further, McGonagall coughed, getting the attention of all the first years. I expect you all to maintain silence and not make a mess out of yourselves. Please take care of your appearance and make yourself presentable. You will be entering the Great Hall in a moment, and I don't want you to look like you've been through a storm. McGonagall's words were pointed and blunt. Especially her last words, which she said looking at two kids that were close by, a boy with a black-haired nest for a head and a redhead with mud splattered on his face. McGonagall walked away and slipped through the small door that led to the Great Hall, leaving all the kids to themselves. Arg. All because of you, Hermione complained. Because of me? What happened because of me? See, Professor McGonagall told us to stay silent because you roped me into a conversation. Huh. It wasn't as if all the other students were also talking and discussing things, weren't they? Loki reminded sarcastically. Ah. Suddenly a child screamed in the corridor, dragging the attention of all the other first-year students. He was pointing above them, which all the students followed and looked at, only to be stunned themselves. There are ghosts in this world. Loki wondered. Are they of the chained pathway? And they're stuck in the Wraith sequence? Or are they just spirits? Or maybe something like Red Angel Medici? Why don't you need spirit vision to see them? Will they cause me to lose control? Silence. McGonagall announced her return with a sharp reprimand, causing the children to fall silent. This time, however, in her hands was a rolled-up parchment. Welcome to Hogwarts, McGonagall greeted with a thin, inviting smile once the kids became quiet. The start of the term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your house. The sorting is a very important ceremony because, while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. Loki tuned out the rest of her speech, since the only family that mattered to him presently were Walburga, Elaine and Kreacher. Instead, he found himself observing McGonagall. She looks powerful, I wonder what sequence she is. Myone said she could do transfiguration easily. Is she the transfiguration teacher then? He remained in the zen state of observing things for a while until he finally heard, now, form a line, and follow me. She said, and the children once again followed her into the Great Hall. Thousands upon thousands of candles were lit and hung in the air without any wax dripping on the students below. All the first years shuffled along behind McGonagall, dragging their feet at the slow pace the line was moving in between four long tables on which students from the other years were sitting and looking at them like they were new merchandise. Looking at the ceiling, Loki heard Hermione beside him whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the night sky. I read it in Hogwarts history. which caused him to look up at it too. It really feels like an exact replica, neat. Finally coming to a stop on the dais in front of the teacher's table where an old and dirty witch's hat was placed on a stool, McGonagall said, "You will come to the stool and place the hat on your head when your name is called." The unsorted students just gulped and nodded their heads in acceptance, each wondering what sort of trials the hat would make them face. While Loki thought, "A hat will sort us. Surely it can't be that simple, right? How will it even sort us? I thought nothing was written about it in the Black Library because the test changed each year, but a hat. What sort of test is this? A fashion test?" But before McGonagall could begin reading off the list, surprising all the new children, the hat twitched and a rip near the brim of the dirty hat opened wide like a mouth, and the hat began to sing. "Oh, you may want me to prettify. But don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can identify a smarter hat than me. There's nothing hidden in your head. The sorting hat can't see. Believe me, there were several other heads who tried to tear me open to see. You might belong in Gryffindor, whose pathway lives to measure the strong. Their hearts are not to be housed indoors, because they live only to get along. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are as bright as the sun, working day or night with huff and puff, building towers in their fun. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, whose mind gave us the mundane and the magical. Yet her disciples all sought knowledge without flaw, in pursuit of truth in both grand and practical. Or perhaps in Slytherin, where a true master was born, whose mind delved into the dark and mean, to achieve all that one can mourn. So put me on, don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm a thinking cap." With the song done, the hall burst into a round of loud applause, but Loki tuned it out in favor of analyzing what the sorting hat had just said. But his memory wouldn't cooperate well. "I think I heard it say pathway, but was it talking about the Beander pathways? And didn't it say it could read my mind? Will it read all my memories and know that I have been reincarnated? Huh, can I ask it for the lyrics to the song? I felt like I missed something important. Damn. Need to work on that occlumency thing fast. Abbot Hannah," McGonagall shouted. A young girl rushed out of the line and ran toward the stool, and once on it, McGonagall placed the hat on her. The hat remained in thought only for a second before it shouted, "Hufflepuff." McGonagall called out multiple other names in succession, with each person getting sorted into either Gryffindor or Hufflepuff, occasionally Ravenclaw, and then also Slytherin, but nothing big happened other than the house that got the new student shedding a few claps in celebration. "So Myone's in Gryffindor, good for her," Loki thought as he watched her give him a short nod with a sweet smile before going to join the others at the Gryffindor table. Harry Potter. At the mention of the name, the hall fell into a deathly silence. Whispers were strewn about and people began pointing fingers at the boy who was walking to the stool to try the hat on. Loki spotted a scrawny boy and felt slight pity for him. Everyone could see how he was nervous and looked terrified at the idea of even trying to hat on, but they said nothing. "He's like me before I met Walburga, hasn't eaten anything to fill his frame. Although not as bad, he still looks like bones. Isn't he the hero of the wizarding world? Why's he like this? Is there no, save Harry Potter and keep him well-fed protection agency?" McGonagall placed the hat on Harry and the hall turned silent again as a short conversation ensued in between the hat and Harry, remaining only in the privacy of their minds. The short silence that was thrust upon the hall snapped when the hat loudly announced, "Gryffindor." The table, dressed in robes that had golden red accents, shouted out loud. Some even threw their empty goblets into the air, which a few professors had to magic to slow down during the fall so that it wouldn't hurt anyone. Loki could see the Slytherins scowling while the rest of the tables clapped in celebration, yet the most shocking thing he found at the moment was that one of the professors wearing a purple turban sent Harry a deathly glare. What's going on with him? He can't seriously hate a student for going into Gryffindor, can he? As the celebration passed over the hall, it soon turned silent once again, with only 4 children standing in the line nervously waiting to be sorted. Turpin, Lisa, Ravenclaw, Weasley, Ron, Gryffindor, Zabini, Blaise, Slytherin. I hadn't noticed earlier since it was so seamless, but the robes changed their colors after their houses were announced. Loki noted as he saw Zabini's robe gain silver and green accents after he was sorted. Everyone then turned to look at Loki, the last remaining member of the group of first years who had to be sorted. Yet Loki remained impassive under the stares of the collective group. HMPF. If they want me to feel nervous, it'll take more than kids who still smell of their mother's milk. I bet they've never fought off a madman trying to advance his sequence by killing a bunch of people for his ritual. I'm definitely more mature. Loki. McGonagall called. Loki walked with steady steps as he reached onto the stool, and then under everyone's surprised gaze he spoke to McGonagall. Could you clean it, please? It's very dirty. I'd rather not put it on my head when it's like that. McGonagall's eye twitched and Snape in the teacher's chair snorted so loudly a few people thought the exhaust of a car backfired. McGonagall tried to come up with an excuse, but seeing Loki's earnest eyes she couldn't help but feel compelled to do what he asked. McGonagall, under everyone's gaze, pulled out her own wand and wordlessly cast a charm on the hat. The hat turned and spun around its tip, causing all the dust that had gathered on it to be expelled outward and collected to a point from where it was banished to an unknown place. The regal dark blue of the hat was revealed, and everyone in the hall let out a collective gasp before some of them gagged, remembering the time they'd let the filthy thing touch their heads. Thank you. Loki nodded and picked up the hat and sat down with royal confidence by billowing his cloak so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable while sitting on the stool. He then placed the hat on his head as its rim dipped low and covered his eyes, hiding them away from the group of people looking at him from afar. Why does the hat feel so familiar? Loki wondered as soon as he placed it on his head, since he could feel something in the hat attracting his intuition. Master. An old voice in his head spoke with familiarity, breaking Loki's concentration. It felt like it was Loki's own voice, just a little more mature and older. Master. Loki questioned back, startled, yet he kept his outward composure. I know it might sound crazy right now, but I've known you for a length of time longer than yourself. Is this some sort of scam? Loki asked suspiciously as he tried to do his best not to use all of his strength to yeet away the hat into oblivion. I know you might hate me for this now, but it is important that I do this for you. What do you mean? Loki asked, getting a bad feeling for whatever was about to happen. And then, without his permission or explaining anything to him, the hat shouted. Slytherin. Loki's first reaction was to be frozen. He felt his blood cool down and his head spin. What? Slytherin. But why? I don't have any ambitious plans. I mean, won't every Beander want to become a true god? Loki tried to reason, but it seemed like the hat had died because it didn't respond to any of his questions. Loki slowly stood up and placed the now good-looking hat on his head back on the stool. As he turned around and analyzed the students sitting around in the Great Hall, Loki's eyes met Hermione's. There was a sense of betrayal hidden under a facade of normalcy in those eyes, and Loki could easily sense it, but he smiled and sent an almost imperceptible nod in her direction to tell her that their friendship wouldn't be affected. Damn, I didn't think I'd end up in Slytherin. Loki thought as he made his way to the table that was lightly clapping for him. At least Walburga won't be disappointed about this now, will she? Loki found himself a little space beside a brunette girl who had introduced herself as Tracy Davis on the boat and made himself comfortable. Before anyone could talk to him though, Dumbledore stood up behind the teachers' tables and announced, "Welcome. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are: Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak, thank you." Loki looked confused as he wondered what Dumbledore had just said. Is he speaking in Latin? But that would mean he just called someone stupid. Perhaps he meant something else. Meh, I don't care enough. I'm sure though, that something's gone wrong with him. Maybe the power he wields has gotten to his head. First, it was not paying the teachers enough, and now it's using curse words to describe the houses. Poor Dumbledore must miss having his sanity. Maybe a spectator could fix his mental problems. He looked around the teacher's table only to be surprised about a person sitting there. Is that giant the one who helped us cross the lake and helped me at the police station? He's a professor. I should talk to him when I'm free. But then his eyes fell onto the food before him that had just magically appeared. Picking food and placing it on his plate, Loki ignored everyone else on the table and kept to himself, yet a single student on the table disturbed Loki. I knew I'd seen you before. You were that pauper in Madame Malkin's store. Draco said, pointing at Loki. Pauper? Someone asked, much to Draco's satisfaction. Yeah, his clothes were all the wrong size and dirty, like a pauper's. He smelled worse than a pig too. A few students laughed, but Loki didn't mind and continued to eat with the impeccable table manners Walburga had drilled into him. You can't mimic to be a pureblood when you're a filthy mudblood. Draco whispered just enough for everyone around him to hear, causing them to giggle. Loki finished chewing in silence and then gulped his mouth full, wiped himself with a handkerchief and spoke in a polite tone. Who said I want to be a pureblood? I don't want to become an inbreed maniac that hails another half-blood maniac as the greatest thing that has happened to them. Hypocrites the lot of you are. A stunned silence reigned across the table, attracting the attention of all the other students and teachers in the hall. Take that back, you filthy mudblood. Draco cursed, but his voice carried across the whole hall. While the whole hall became tense and frigid as if a fight was about to break out, Loki gave Draco a dead-eye stare and spoke in the calmest tone he'd ever spoken. Okay, filthy inbreed. The air at the table immediately turned frosty while the other people in the hall became dumbfounded, but Loki was unaffected by it, choosing instead to continue munching on the desserts that had popped up. Although the pureblood fanatics who chose to feel insulted by what Loki said wanted to do nothing else other than beat him up, they couldn't, because they were right in front of the entire Hogwarts teaching staff. I hope you can stay safe when there are no teachers around, you twat. A senior student whispered across the table into Loki's ears. Huh. Pathetic. You call yourself purebloods but you can't even act when the teachers are here. You're pathetic. Worse than garden gnomes you lot are. What are you waiting for? If you want to keep finding excuses, you shouldn't have picked a fight in the first place. The senior who had threatened Loki was now glowing red with anger and rage, yet he remained seated in his place since another one was holding his hand and not letting him stand. Huh. For a house supposed to be filled with proud nobles, all I can see are leeching scum that need fresh blood just to survive. Before Loki could say another word, a goblet filled with some juice was thrown at him, but anticipating such a thing, Loki had primed his spirituality by spreading it into the air around him. And when the goblet was in his range, he imagined a telekinetic force pulse around himself which caused the goblet to reflect back the way it had arrived, dousing what appeared to be a 7th-year student in the yellow drink from head to toe. Are you lot trolls? Using physical violence when you can use magic? But I guess I should be lenient since you probably don't have the brains after all that inbreeding you went through. All the purebloods on the table scowled and looked at the one who threw the goblet with anger, since he'd just given Loki a point to criticize them on a golden platter. And just as the table was about to erupt into chaos, a firm voice calmed them all. 50 points from Slytherin. Mr. Loki. Follow me, Snape said in his poetic tone that was very close to a mumble. Loki looked up at Snape with surprise but complied immediately after wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. Snape, under the intense gaze of all the students, began to walk out of the Great Hall while Loki followed him out cheerfully. Meanwhile, all the students of Slytherin looked positively furious that their prey had escaped, but then Loki saw Draco whisper something which caused them all to wear satisfied smiles. Arriving in a random classroom nearby, Loki greeted Snape with a salute once he turned around. Good evening, Professor Snape. Snape looked at him judgingly and asked a simple question. What are you trying to do, Mr. Loki? What do you mean, Professor? You know exactly what I mean. Sigh, I was just responding back in kind, Professor. How else would you have wanted me to treat them? Quote. You will spend the rest of your nights in the castle in detention with the different teachers. And a prefect will be escorting you to your room every night. Huh. Loki felt a little confused, but then his eyes lit up as he asked, Professor. You care about me enough that you're trying to hell. You will begin with me, Loki. And I expect you to comply immediately by going to the dungeons and waiting patiently in my office. Professor, I don't know if you know, but I'm new and I don't know where your office is. Snape sneered as Loki said this and then said in a condescending tone. Then I expect you to use that brain of yours and figure out where it is. Can't you even do such a simple thing, Mr. Loki? Or are you no different? Wah! Loki froze in place, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly as Snape turned around and glided away to go back to the Great Hall. And then Loki burst into a fit of laughter. Oh my God. Professor Snape, you just cracked a joke. I didn't know you could do such a thing. Sigh, well, I guess I have received my first quest. But how kind of him to keep me under the protection of the teachers so that I'm not murdered in my sleep. Huh. And I get to learn magic all the time. I'm sure my own would kill to be in my place. Although I wonder what she's doing right now. She was disappointed that I got sorted into Slytherin. Oh, no worries. I'll catch up with her later. Walking through the long corridors of the castle, Loki's mind wandered about the dinner. Tracy didn't look at me with scorn when that white-haired brat talked down to me. Are there factions in the nobles? I mean, Walburga hated muggles, but she still loved me. But it might also just be because I'm such an amazing purse. I finally caught you. A voice echoed off the walls and caused Loki to stop in his tracks. What are you doing here? The voice asked from the corner of the corridor. It was an old man that had very thin white hair. He dragged his legs while holding a shiny black cat in his arms. His free hand held a lantern which swayed rhythmically to ward away the darkness that seemed to have set in. Professor. Loki mumbled just loud enough for the man to hear, causing him to stop and look at Loki with confusion. You must be a first year. Why did you skip the opening banquet? The man asked with a crazed smile showing all his teeth that sent a slight shiver down Loki's spine. No. Professor Snape gave me detention. I'm supposed to wait for him in his office. The man looked down at his cat as if he could converse with it and then spoke in a bland tone. I won't let you trick me. Trick you? What do I gain by tricking you? Why don't we do this? Why don't you escort me to Professor Snape's office? Loki tried to reason. The man looked at Loki with a frown but eventually nodded his head. Lead the way, Loki said with a soft smile on his face while happily celebrating in his mind. Ha ha. Take that, Professor Snape. GPS acquired. May I know your name, Professor? Loki asked politely as he followed the old man down the corridors. Argus. Argus Filch. I see. Why weren't you at the banquet, Professor Filch? I'm not a professor, boy. I'm the Hogwarts caretaker. Oh, how do you take care of the entire castle all alone? I mean, I know magic makes things easier, but I'm sure it is hard to clean the entire castle alone every day, right? Do you have an armada of maids? Battle maids even? Loki spoke his thoughts out loud. Filch turned around and looked at Loki a little surprised and then continued walking as he spoke. I'm a squib. I cannot use magic. What? No offense to you, but isn't that even worse? That means they're treating you like a slave, making you toil away with labor for a meager amount of money. Loki said, all while wondering internally if Dumbledore was skimming off the funds a little too much by not even providing a team of cleaners under Filch. The house elves keep the castle clean. My job is to keep the castle safe from students and sometimes even the students safe from themselves. Filch said as he tousled his lantern toward a door. Professor Snape's office? Loki asked softly. Yes, go in, boy. I will wait for you outside so that you don't entertain any ideas to leave. As you wish, Mr. Caretaker Filch, Loki said with a polite smile and moved into the office. Before I leave, what would she be called? Loki said, pointing at the cat that was in Filch's arms. Filch stared at Loki for a bit but then said with a soft smile, Miss Norris. Her name's Miss Norris. That's a cute name for a cute kitty cat, Loki said, rubbing Miss Norris behind her ear, earning a satisfied purr from her. See you later, Miss Norris. Walking in calmly, Loki managed to cover his surprise when the torches on the walls lit up by themselves with a soft blue flame. He closed the door behind him and entered the office that Snape had asked him to wait in. Several jars with specimens of various creatures and body parts floating inside them were arranged on racks around the room. If Loki didn't know any better, he would have guessed that this was the lair of a dark wizard, since he found a few human parts in there too. With nothing better to do, Loki looked around the room, studying the various items in the jar, recognizing some, appreciating the value of others while planning a theft where he could rob the place clean. He felt something eerie stare at him constantly throughout his stay in the room, but Loki paid no attention to it, or at least did his best to. The door opened forcefully, sucking in a puff of air out of the room and making the torches flicker, causing Loki to pay attention to who had entered. Professor Snape. Loki greeted, bowing lightly while standing in the corner of the room. Snape moved to the center of the room and paused. He waved his wand and caused the door to shut itself and lock behind him, making the flames flicker for a bit but stabilizing immediately after. He then looked pointedly at Loki and asked, "What were you thinking, Mr. Loki?" "I told you already, I was responding in kind. I didn't shout or get upset, it was smart. I did what they did to me," Loki explained calmly. "And suffer by making the house you're going to live in, into your worst enemy. Truly smart." Snape sneered. Loki remained silent for a moment, but then he spoke. "If they were going to try something, I would defend myself. I know a little bit of magic too. And I doubt they'd do anything drastic when we're in school. And what if they stepped out of line? Accidents involving deaths of students have happened in Hogwarts before," Snape said dully. "I'm sure my dear professor wouldn't let it come to it," Loki said with his arms open, showing his helplessness. "Right." Snape ignored him and calmly walked toward his desk. Once behind it, he spoke. "Your detention will last until 11 in the night every day, and only then will you return to your common room." "What will I be doing, Professor?" Loki asked with a smile, eager to learn more. "There are ingredients in that barrel. Separate them into the different boxes based on their properties," Snape said, pointing at the barrel first and then at a cupboard that was filled with ingredients stacked on shelves that had markers on them. "I see." Without arguing, Loki nodded, walked to a shelf with books and pulled a book from one of the shelves that was titled, 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, by Felida Spore. Time passed in the office as Snape spent his time reading a book and going over different papers while occasionally looking Loki's way to see if he made a mistake and casually pointing it out by not so sarcastically telling him to use his brain more. Soon it was 11 and Snape snapped his book shut with a soft thud. "You may leave," Snape said, and Loki nodded, yawning, "Tired of sorting herbs, plants and organs for the last 3 hours. I must be the first person to receive a detention right on the day I arrived at Hogwarts, right?" Loki attempted to joke with Snape, but he didn't respond and shut the door in Loki's face, leaving him to figure out his way back into the common room on his own. Stepping out of the office and walking around the corridors, Loki spotted Filch once again. "Mr. Filch, could you help me out again?" Loki asked politely. "What happened, boy?" "The Slytherin common room, would you know where it is and guide me to it?" "HMPF. It's my duty to see that students don't linger around after curfew anyway." Following Filch, Loki ended up at a door on which snakes crawled around waiting to snack on anyone that tried to force their way in. "The password has always been pureblood for the first week," Filch said with distaste. "Pureblood," Loki said, standing next to the door, watching in amazement as the snakes curled around and moved into their holes before the door swung open, revealing a steady stream of steps leading deeper into the dungeon. "Thank you, Mr. Caretaker. Do let me know if you ever need any help." "HMPF. Filch snorted and began to move away along with Miss Norris, with Loki leaving behind a polite, "Good night to you too, Miss Norris." Stepping down the never-ending staircase, Loki wondered, given this is an ancient castle, wouldn't all the plumbing end up in the Great Lake? And given how I'm in the dungeons which are closest to the lake, doesn't it mean that the dungeons are the closest to the shit? Ew, is that why Professor Snape's hair is so greasy? 'Cause he takes a shower with shitty water. Bile shot up in Loki's mouth, but he barely managed to hold back the food that followed. Stepping into the common room, Loki laid his eyes on the extravagant decorations that the room had and felt like a royal. "Beautiful," Loki said, looking out of the sealed window wall on the dungeon that had little lights around it to shine a little light into the dark black lake. Loki could swear he saw a large eye peering at him through the darkness for a second, but he chalked it to his imagination due to his sleep-deprived state. Walking into the common room, Loki froze when he saw what appeared to be a 7th-year student lying sleepily on the couch. Attempting to tiptoe past the student was a failure since as soon as Loki stepped foot into the room he found the student waking up and looking right at him. Finally, "You're here," the student said. "Who might you be?" Loki asked with a little worry. "Dominic Shacklebolt," the student said with a smile on his face. "Are you going to do something to me?" Loki asked a little warily. "Well, you were right to be worried, given how many students you turned to be against yourself during dinner. But I'm not here because of them. Well, to be precise, not here to help them. What are you here for then if you're not here to beat me up?" "Well, I would love to beat you up too, since you've created a divide between the purebloods, muggles and half-bloods in the house with such few words, but on the account that I'm a good person, I'm not going to do such a thing. That's what a bad person would say to make me believe they're good," Loki said, pulling his wand out to scare the student. "Huh? And what are you going to do? Fire sparks at me? I know. Oh please. You're a first year, even if you've read all your books you know nothing. So shut it and listen while I'm being nice. I'm tired and I don't want to do this again." "Okay. Good. Firstly, welcome to Slytherin. And secondly, Professor Snape informed me to see that no one takes steps to hurt you directly or indirectly, so from tomorrow, you're leaving the common room with me and never coming back into it until it's night and you've finished your detention and need to sleep." "Understood." Loki nodded. He knew his actions would have consequences, but he didn't expect to have gotten off so light. "Won't they try and attack you?" Loki asked a question next. "Not unless they want to go against the 3-time under-17 world dueling champion," Dominic said with a smirk on his face. "Can you teach me?" Loki instantly asked with sparkly eyes. "Ha ha. I would have if it was my 6th year. Unfortunately, I'm in my 7th and I have to study a lot and prepare for my newts. So I'm sorry." "Ah, that's sad. You just went from a superstar to a nerd real quick. But I could give you my notes and study materials if you behave from now on," Dominic said with a smart smile. "All right, you're a good nerd." Loki nodded and then asked something else. "By the way, aren't you a pureblood too? Aren't you affected by my comments?" I don't take offense to it because I find most of it meaningless and I wouldn't have become the head boy if I was so biased against the rest of the student population in Hogwarts, would I have?" Loki's eyes sparkled, so he immediately asked, "You're the head boy. Do I get special privileges since you're taking care of me?" "Ha ha. No, don't expect me to be partial with you. Now off you go, you've got to get up early tomorrow to match my schedule. See you," Dominic said and began walking towards the men's dormitory, but he paused and turned back. "Oh, and the men's dormitory is this way, while the women's is that way. Don't attempt to ever sneak in there, you'll get stung by quite the nasty curses and then the women will wake up while you're curling on the ground and screaming to curse you even more." Oddly specific, but okay. "How will I find my dormitory?" "The door will have your nameplate on it," Dominic simply said and waved his hands as he walked away into the darkness of the dungeons. With Dominic gone, the common room had become empty and Loki collapsed onto a sofa. Tracing his finger around the whistle on his wrist, Loki pulled it up and blew into it, causing Sunny to appear in front of him exiting from the spirit world. "You cute little fella, how are you?" Loki asked, squishing the chubby Niffler's cheeks. Squeak squeak. "Oh, you've gotten close to completing your potion digestion already?" Loki asked with surprise since he was still just 51% of the way there. Although the stunt at the train where he stole money from children had given him 1 extra percent, it still was nowhere near completion. "Then we need to get you your next potion ingredients so that you can have your next potion immediately once you're done with this one," Loki said with a smile, happy that he at least had one little friend who would always have his back for him. Loki examined the common room a little, observing the bust of Salazar Slytherin in the room and finding it a little ugly. Did they change the bust to make him look ugly? Loki wondered. Since the higher the sequence the more charm a person has, and given how they were the most powerful witches and wizards of their times, shouldn't the Hogwarts founders look prettier? And wasn't there a reason to believe physical forms of gods caused them to lose control? Is that why his face looks so deformed? Someone schemed to make him lose control and kill him. Is he even dead? With the Niffler on his shoulder, Loki walked through the aisles and reached a door with a golden nameplate on it that read, Loki. Finally, a room to rest in for the day. Walking into the room and shutting it behind himself, Loki found the emerald-themed room to his liking. There was a luxurious bed, his trunk at its foot, a dresser and a bathroom attached to the room through a door. The room felt just the right amount of grand and gave Loki a sense of peace that he'd been missing throughout the day. Carefully checking that the door had been locked behind him, Loki pushed his trunk in front of it to make sure that no one would get in without waking him up. Although there might be protections that do not allow one person to enter another person's room, it's best that I take precautions and don't let myself become an easy target. Who knows what might happen otherwise? Pulling out the two-way mirror from his trunk, Loki looked at the sleeping Elaine who was on its other end and whispered, "Good night, Elaine." With one last look around the room that had been lit magically and was now darkening, Loki collapsed into the bed with the Niffler who was going to stay awake for a while and make sure to digest his potion further. "Good night, Sonny." Squeak. And Loki was out like a light. Knock ** knock. A sharp rapping on the door woke Loki up from his dreamless slumber, causing him to flip around on the bed at odd angles. Why is someone waking me up when it's so dark? The lights in the room began to emerge in a soft glow, giving the room a cool color. Loki, wake up. It's time to leave. Loki awoke with a start as he realized it was Dominic who was speaking on the outside. Coming. Loki shouted and quickly ran into the washroom, undressing at record speed before jumping into the shower. Taking a quick shower that only lasted a few minutes, Loki stepped out of the shower naked and opened his trunk to pick out clothes. Oh, now I can't express myself properly since I have to wear a uniform. How bland. Loki pulled on the shirt, pants and vest that he had to wear, donning the robes after it and stuffing his wand into the back pocket of his pants. Won't it break if I sit on it or fall down and land on my butt? Loki. Hearing the shout, Loki snapped out of his thoughts, picked a satchel that was filled with his books as his bag and then pushed aside the trunk that was blocking the door. Once done, he gave himself one last appraising look in the mirror and opened the door. "I'm here, Dominic," Loki shouted and then said, "Stop screaming." "Good," Dominic said, and without any delay started walking out of the dormitory. "Do we have to leave this early?" Loki asked with unwillingness in his steps. "Early? It's 6 in the morning, for God's sake. Classes start in 2 hours and I need to finish my summer homework." "It's late, damn you. You need to do your homework. Aren't you the head boy? Why didn't you finish your homework earlier?" "Bah, it's homework. It's meant to be finished a few minutes before the deadline, I say." Loki snorted and pulled himself to match Dominic's pace as they stepped into the common room. There were a few older students diligently studying here and there. Fewer glared at Loki when he stepped into the room, but seeing Dominic there, no one said a word. Exiting the rather silent common room, Loki followed Dominic as they began to crawl through the dungeons. But then Loki suddenly shouted, "Wait! Can we go back? I forgot my pocket watch." Dominic only ignored him and continued walking, so Loki gave up and followed after him. "You're free to go around wherever," Dominic said, seeing Loki still following him after they stepped out of the Medusa-themed door. "Where are you going?" Loki asked, trying to figure out what to do. "The library. Want to come with? But you'll have to stay away and not disturb me." "Sure. I got nothing better to do anyway," Loki said, and followed Dominic up a shortcut through the floors to the 3rd floor. "Huff huff, damn, these stairs, why are there so many?" Loki cursed as he held his hands on his knees, causing Dominic to wait impatiently for him while tapping his legs. "Come on," Dominic urged, and Loki looked at him with exhaustion. "How are you not tired at all?" Loki asked with confusion, and Dominic smirked. "Hee, a little thing called the levitation charm. Apply it to your clothes just enough and you'll end up a lot lighter." "Damn, that's one good use of it. How did I not think of that?" "'Cause you're dumb," Dominic plainly stated, and started walking, which Loki followed. Once they arrived at the library, Dominic greeted Madame Irma Pants with a soft smile which she followed. Only you'd be dedicated enough to come to the library so early, Dominic. Oh please ma'am, I'm much worse than you who are here every day even before me. Loki stuffed back the urge to cringe and managed to maintain a soft smile throughout, although if one paid attention it was twitching wildly. Who have you brought along with yourself? Madame Pants asked and guessed. Your family. No ma'am, he's from Slytherin, just upset the wrong bunch and now needs to be protected. I see. I don't want trouble to follow you into the library, all right. These books here are a heritage that needs to be protected and taken care of. Madame Pants warned Loki with narrowed eyes and he immediately nodded. Don't worry ma'am, I'm sure Dominic will show me the ropes around here. Good. Madame Pants nodded and went back to doing her work, which was keeping track of the books in the library in some sort of ancient register. Selecting a desk in the corner that Dominic seemed to prefer, he said, We'll meet here after we select our books. The deeper into the library you go, the more esoteric the books are. Some of them are only dissertations on unproved theories, so do take them with a grain of salt. Understood. Loki nodded and went on his way to search for an interesting book to read. Well, I called my own a nerd, but here I am reading books in the library before or not. Loki thought, spotting a certain bushy, dirty, blonde-haired girl near Madame Pants's seat. Seemingly noticing a gaze on her, Hermione turned around and spotted Loki looking at her, and after a little bit of confusion broke into a wide smile. Loki. Hermione whispered excitedly after moving to Loki at breakneck speed. You're here to read books too? Haha, yeah. Loki said dryly. Oh, already found someone to spend your life with, Loki? A voice from behind him teased. Oh God, Dominic, not this. I'm 11 for God's sake. Loki reasoned. What are you two talking about? Hermione asked, putting on a small pout, unhappy at being left out of the conversation. Nothing. Loki quickly covered with a wave of his hand, using his Jedi powers to change the topic of the conversation. What are you doing here? Loki asked Hermione. Reading extra material for our classes, of course. Oh, rarely find a first year that's serious about their studies. Good for you. Dominic said and went to sit down in his chair, cracking a book open and taking notes on a parchment. Who's he? Hermione asked with suspicion. The head boy. Loki dryly responded. Oh, why are you following him then? I hope you're not in any trouble. Trouble? Of course not, it's just that after the stunt I pulled off in the Great Hall yesterday there might be a threat to my life, so I'm being protected. I even have detentions with all the professors for the rest of the year. Oh no, are you going to be alright? Hermione asked, worried that her first friend was in trouble. And why were you so rude to them anyway? You should have known better. I felt like it. I didn't like that Pratt anyway. He and his dad left a poor impression on me in Madame Malkin's store. But I would also have to warn you, don't linger around me too much in public, or they might make you a target to hurt me too. And that might include your loved ones too. Loki warned. I understand, Hermione reluctantly agreed since she considered Loki her first friend, yet she was forced to stay away from him. See you later then. Loki said with a nod and went along his way, exploring the library for something interesting to read. As time passed, Loki scoured the library, looking at books that ranged from the basics of magical theory to advanced tips and tricks in silent spellcasting, but he couldn't find a single book that would sustain his interest for longer than a page. In the end, Loki wandered too far into the dissertation section where most books were written in ancient languages and needed to be translated. There, after randomly walking around, Loki stumbled on a book that he thought he needed the most. A Newbie's Practical Guide to Occlumency. Why's this here? All the way in the dissertation section. The book was written in the runic language and Loki found it rather difficult to translate, but the book appealed to him, more than just because of its topic, it appealed to him in a spiritual sense. He felt a certain sense of familiarity with it, as if it were calling him. Is this a book related to Beyonders? But why? Now that I think about it, why is this the only book on the subject of occlumency in this entire library? Shouldn't it be a priority to protect your minds against mind Jedi? To cover the first book he'd gotten, Loki picked up a different book to read in the library. This book also interested him and felt like it was a normal book that he could show to others. With the book on occlumency stuffed neatly inside his satchel under all the other books, Loki moved to where Dominic was sitting and began to read the second book. "Oh, Ancient Runes for Alchemists. Why did you get that book?" Dominic asked with surprise on his face. "Because I saw that all the spells in the textbooks followed patterns that look a lot like the runes in this book. You have a keen eye, ask me if you don't understand anything and I might be able to help." Dominic extended a helping hand. After their short conversation, silence fell back into the library, disturbed only by the students occasionally pouring into the library to find reference books to finish their summer homework that hadn't been completed, along with the rhythmic scratching of quills on parchments. Loki's eyes in the beginning sought out Hermione, wondering if he'd hurt the little witch by asking her to stay away from him, but as he read further into the book, he became completely absorbed in it. Alchemy is the art of mimicking charms by etching its basic components into different treated materials that can be activated by pouring in the required amount of spirituality. An alchemist is a master of both potions and charms work, since in simple words, alchemy is the art of breaking down and translating magic into rune work so that anyone with a little spirituality, irrespective of skill, can manifest the effects of the charm. This has also caused some alchemists to call the items produced in this way charms. Potions are used to extend the life of the various materials so that the alchemical item can be reused multiple times. The book then delved into various alchemical examples, from a simple device to wake you up in the morning to complex devices like the one that could give you magical vision and the ability to see through objects. So spirit vision, but a little inferior. But if there's an item that can give people spirit vision, that means there's also a charm to do so. As Loki flipped through the pages for the special vision item, he felt that the potions used were a little complicated for him to understand, but then as he studied the ingredients in the potion of an item that could allow you to see through darkness, his eyes widened as something clicked in his mind. Spleen of a vampire bat is the main ingredient of this potion. Where have I heard this before? This potion uses the main ingredients of the sleepless potion of the darkness pathway. Loki, you done? Dominic suddenly asked. Is it time to leave already? Yeah, it's 7:30 already, you need to eat breakfast too before classes. Oh. Loki looked reluctant to part ways with the alchemy book, but Dominic reminded him, you can check out the book if you want to read it. Though I don't doubt some of those potion recipes are going to go above your head. I can check this book out. Loki asked in surprise. I thought they wouldn't allow me to take away such ancient books. Yeah, let's go. It's getting late. Checking out the book with a warning from Madame Pants that she'd do whatever happens to the book to him, Loki wordlessly took one book over the counter and one hidden inside his bag that no one bothered to check. Arriving at the Great Hall, Loki looked at the teachers' tables and spotted very few teachers at the tables so early in the morning. There's only the giant man, Professor McGonagall, a half-goblin teacher, and a teacher whose name I don't know, who appears to be in her 40s. Where's Dumbledore? Did he run away from work again? Leaving all his responsibilities to the underpaid staff. Sitting beside Dominic on the Slytherin table in the Great Hall, Loki could feel the pointed stares of all the students at the table, but he shrugged them off without a sound. He didn't even open his mouth when Draco said, "Enjoying your detention, mudblood?" Draco tried several other insults to get Loki to pay attention to him, but Loki remained silent, imagining that Draco was the demon that ate you once you spoke to it. But it seemed like saying nothing still offended him, since he said afterwards, "My father will hear about this." "Here's your timetable," Dominic said, handing Loki a slip of paper taken out of his pocket. "Potions. First class. Seriously?" Loki voiced his concern. "Why? Don't like Professor Snape?" Dominic asked with a raised eyebrow. "No, I just think it is going to be uncharacteristic of him to speak so many words. It'll be hilarious." Dominic snorted into his sandwich and ignored Loki for the rest of the breakfast lest he choke on his food. "I assume you'll find your way to the classroom in the dungeons?" Dominic asked. "Of course I will. I know where his office is, had my first detention with him yesterday." Good. Then I will leave you to it. I have a class with Professor McGonagall. Cool. Loki left the table along with Dominic, and when they split their ways, Loki pulled out his wand and cast the levitation charm on his clothes and satchel, and suddenly felt like a great burden had been taken off his shoulders. God, this feels good. Praised Dominic. But, won't it be better if I get used to walking around with the weights first? So that I can grow my muscles along with my magical capabilities. But I have my potion for that. I'm sure I'll eventually gain super strength from some potion on the way. Wingardium Leviosa for the win. With his robes bellowing behind him, Loki began walking, but then he suddenly stopped. Oh my god. Is this how Professor Snape makes his robes float behind him? Ha! I've discovered a secret that is worth 100 points on its own. Ha ha. I wonder what his reaction will be once I show him that I can do it too. Loki walked into the dungeons and navigated into the potions classroom. With no one else in the room, Loki found himself a spot in the center of the room behind a desk and sat down there. It looks no different in the day than it did in the night, Loki noted. I need to figure out a way to digest my potion faster. Loki thought as he closed his eyes to relax a little. Why are the tables in this classroom so wide and long though? Is it because each student will have their own cauldrons to cook potions in? But aren't there too few tables for that? Pairs. But who will I partner with? I doubt any Slytherin wants to partner with me. I'm sure he'll figure something out for me. Loki nodded, his confidence rising a few levels thanks to Snape. Loki watched as a fearful boy came stumbling into the classroom, and when he moved past Loki, he spotted a small slip of paper hanging out of his pockets. Loki pulled out the paper without alerting the boy and looked at what was written on it, since his intuition said it was moderately valuable. Well, I know what to steal now. But the trouble is, how do I profit from it? Loki thought as he slipped back the piece of paper into the boy's pocket. As the classroom filled and the clock ticked to 8, Snape entered the classroom, gliding soundlessly like a bat as he arrived in front of the room and stood in silence. Picking up the register on the desk, Snape started the roll call. Snape's eyes scanned the students for the corresponding names as they raised their hands in silence, since an unreadable aura emanated from him that made them all remain silent, even Loki, since he could see Snape was in a bad mood for some reason. Ah, yes. Harry Potter. Snape hissed, and the gloomy aura around him grew darker. Our new celebrity. Draco and his gang snickered behind their tables, almost making enough noise to disrupt the aura Snape was carrying, but Snape didn't bother with them. Ignoring Harry Potter after displaying clear hatred for him, Snape carried on. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making. As there is little foolish wand waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even stopper death if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach. All throughout Snape's speech, there was an annoying scratching sound produced by Loki, who was taking notes, but people ignored it in favor of paying attention to Snape's words that had entranced them. Potter. Snape suddenly exclaimed, seemingly remembering his enmity with him. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Everyone could clearly see Potter was mighty confused. He looked around for help from his friends, but not even his closest, the redhead, Ron Weasley, could help him out. I don't know, sir. Harry said with worry. Snape's lips curled into a sneer as he clicked his tongue, clearly pretending to be disappointed, and said, fame clearly isn't everything. Snape did everything while Hermione's hand was still in the air, vibrating like a toothbrush. Loki was worried it would fall off with how vigorously she was shaking it. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bazaar? I don't know, sir. What's the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? I don't know, sir, but Hermione seems to know. Why don't you ask her about it? Snape growled at Hermione and shouted, sit down, girl. And then turned to Harry and said, adding powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood would get you a powerful sleeping potion, known as the Draught of Living Death. You would find a bezoar in the stomach of a goat, and monkshood and woldsbane are the same plant, aconite. There was silence in the classroom except for the constant scratching sound that had been accompanying the class since the beginning. Well, why aren't you writing it down like Loki is? Snape growled at the class, and everyone looked at Loki, who was writing everything Snape had said down, finding the source of the annoying noise in class. Loki yawned and continued writing down his notes, but was surprised that everyone was suddenly looking at him. Huh, what happened? Why is everyone looking at me suddenly? But Loki ignored them and went back to playing tic-tac-toe by himself. Snape stood in front of the class and dictated notes that everyone but Loki was writing down. Come on, Loki. Although it is dark, you can't sleep. Come on, Loki, you can do it. Stay awake. If you sleep, you're going to get beaten. Loki drizzled in and out of sleep as he heard and tuned out Snape's words. Each potion is a conversation in itself. A talk between you and the cauldron in front of you. Making, potion, cures boils. Potion works by collecting waste, sending it out. Porcupine quills are added, to puncture holes into the boils to, excess. Add porcupine quills after, heat. Result, pink smoking liquid. Finally, Snape slammed his book shut and placed it inside the cupboard under his desk, causing Loki to wake up. Oh, we're done. Loki looked around trying to see if everyone was leaving, but seeing no one doing anything, he became confused and looked at Snape. Seeing Snape waving his wand in front of the board and revealing a recipe on it, Loki became even more confused. Sit in pairs and find yourselves cauldrons and ingredients. I want this potion done before the end of class. People moved through the tables and everyone in Slytherin avoided Loki's table because he was an outcast, while everyone in Gryffindor avoided his table because he was a Slytherin. Except in the end, when Loki returned from picking out good ingredients and a cauldron for himself, he found Hermione standing in front of his table. "Myone, what are you doing here?" Loki whispered. "No one in Gryffindor wants to pair up with me," Hermione said with sadness in her voice. "Ah, my cutesy Myone. Don't worry, you can pair up with this great hero. HMPF. I'm not your cutesy Myone." Alright. Loki calmed the angry Hermione down and revealed his ingredients to her, making her shocked. "How did you get all the best ingredients?" "Hee, I may or may not have taken them from the people who picked them before me." Gasped. "So you stole it?" Hermione whispered, worried about it as she shifted her eyes to look at everyone in the room to see if anyone noticed anything wrong. "No, it was more like they donated it to me unknowingly." "And how does it matter? Don't you want to make a perfect potion anyway? If Professor Snape finds out, he's going to scold you. If, keyword being if. So don't worry." Working together with Hermione, Loki set up their workstation and began adding the right ingredients at the right times. He was responsible for the cauldron while Hermione was responsible for preparing the ingredients. They worked seamlessly, but then Loki asked a question hurriedly. "Myone, do we add porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the heat or after?" "After. That's what Professor Snape said while he was explaining the potion." "Damn. Then jump, Myone. Jump." Loki shouted, getting the attention of a lot of students and Snape, who was pointing out how Malfoy's potion was close to something he'd toss into the garbage. Hermione instantly listened to Loki and jumped up onto her stool, which Loki followed. Following their jump was a loud asterisk boom that rattled all the workstations and caused a few people's cauldrons to slip from their tables and fall into the fire, spreading the potion in them everywhere. "What happened?" Hermione asked amidst the smoke and smell of burnt wood. "That tense guy, was his name Neville? He put porcupine quills into the potion without removing the cauldron from the fire." "Oh no." Snape waved his wand and caused all the smoke and smell to fly out of the room, revealing a teary boy with boils all over his face and arms, and another with black smoke painted on his face and robes, and his body filled with boils. The potion that had leaked onto the floors was eating away at it, along with making holes into the shoes of all the students who were still standing with their feet on the floor. Everyone looked at Snape with bated breaths since he looked positively furious. Everyone could see he was one small squeak away from bursting, and remained silent so as not to attract his attention to skip the wrath and fury that was going to be directed at them at its end. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.